I'd like to say good morning to everyone who has joined us on this call regarding 2020 and AML CFT compliance webinar. I'd like to specifically welcome every one of us who has joined the call. My name is Oladile, and I am the Executive Director, Operation for Data Pro Limited, and also will be the one to moderate the programs today. This program is specifically put together to achieve the following objectives. On the invitation of which has recently been accepted to by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to also address challenges and provide solutions associated with that particular law, entirely within the compliance community. To also dimension and review and update that may become necessary with the view to complying in terms of programs, process, and procedure that may ensue as a result of CAMA 2020. And not only that, to promote the spirit of dialogue, interaction, collaboration, and cooperation among relevant stakeholders. And to also facilitate the culture and conduct of AML CFT compliance in Nigeria. So, like I said, in all, going to speakers in this call. We are going to be listening to in the course of this presentation. Not only that, there will also be a time, allocated to interaction among all the participants. So it is in the light of that I want to enjoin every one of us to pay very rapt attention and with a view to get clarity regarding the law. But before we move to the next thing on the agenda, we also like to implore our very experienced speakers to please note that this program, each presentation has a maximum time of 20 minutes each, and 10 minutes has been allocated for question and answer session. So I know that there is always the urge to share our experience when occasions like this present itself, but I still want to crave your indulgence to allow that to be within the maximum time of 20 minutes. For our participants, you may not be able to, ask questions in terms of, using your mic, but we have an avenue to do that using the Q&A option on our Zoom. I have people working with me in the background who will be able to pick your questions as they come up, and at the end of each presentation, we will be able to make that known to each speaker for them to respond to. In addition to that, we will be having an opening remarks and welcome address from the founder and the managing director of Data Pro Limited. So I want to wish you a very fruitful time in the course of this webinar. So Mr. Abimbola Adesheoju, you have the floor, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dele. Let me share my speech. Okay, good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Abimbola Adesheyoju, and I'm the Managing Director of Data Pro. I want to welcome everyone to this webinar, distinguished speakers, the guest speakers, and members, stakeholders of the AML CFT community, and our friends from the media who joined in. Since the President signed into law CAMA on the 7th of August, as a solution provider within the AML CFT space and a training academy, we've received quite a number of inquiries from our compliance community about the likely effects the law we have on the fight against crime, money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing in Nigeria. A lot of stakeholders are particularly concerned about what will be the implication to the procedure, the KYC procedure for onboarding of non-profits organizations, and we are all aware of the reactions that has followed from the faith-based organization. There's also been a lot of concerns about what will be the implementation roadmap for the UBO register that is now part of the new provisions and part of the new services that we expect from the Corporate Affairs Department. So propelled by some of these, the desire to provide answers to some of these inquiries, we decided to give the platform that we enable all stakeholders and those within the AML CFT community to listen to experts and policymakers directly concerned with some of these issues to come and speak to us. So we decided to organize this. This is just part of what we've been doing for the past 15 years. So we believe that it's better to judge, it's better to discuss, just in the spirit of also recommendation two, that every avenue should be made for collaboration and for dialogue. It is not unexpected that for a law that took more than 15 years to come to fruition, there'll be a lot of comments generated. But as compliance practitioners, I think it's not part of our bid to criticize laws and regulations. Our main job as compliance people is to engage. Even if we differ on any of these regulations, we are supposed to engage with the necessary authorities, maybe to be able to understand better the objectives and what the regulation of the law is supposed to achieve, because essentially every law is set to achieve certain objectives in terms of the protection of maybe lives and properties and the promotion of a healthy and virile economy. So we also believe that as accountable institutions, as reporting institutions, we need to understand what is going on in other parts of the world, and knowing fully well that we now operate in a very globalized economy and a globalized world, very interconnected. So Nigeria cannot be an isolation. We cannot we need to also, as we operate within Nigeria, we also need to leverage on best practices so that we don't become vulnerable to threats and risk that could even emanate outside Nigeria. So it's also in this spirit that we believe that those of us within the community, we need to come together to judge or to talk about this and look at the way forward and how we can all work together to make a success of the law to help us do our job better and help our country in general. We all know that our standard setter on matters concerning AML CFT is actually the Financial Action Task Force. And we also recognize the impacts and the work that the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering, we know as GIABA, is doing within a sub-region. So when it came to making a decision about the panelists, we know that we need to start from the apex of a regulatory pyramid. We are very pleased and happy this afternoon to have in our midst Dr. Budu Nduka, who is the Director of Programs and Projects of GIABA, and he's going to open the floor and talk about the deficiencies that exist within the AML CFT compliance regime in Nigeria and what impact CAMA 2020 will have. We all know that Nigeria just last year on that did the second round of its mutual evaluation, and we are all anxious for the results. But I'm sure Dr. Bruno will not be able to delve into that, but he's going to, in his characteristic intellectual manner, give us an insight into what CAMA can part of the resolution from our deficiencies. We also have among the panelists that we are going to listen to the Corporate Affairs Department, the Corporate Affairs Commission, beg your pardon. The Registrar General, as we all know, is attended to a lot of issues, and he has been kind enough to send the head of the Corporate Affairs Department, Mr. Tolokbe Shunai, and he's going to talk to us also on the implication, the role that CAMA will play in strengthening AML safety regime in Nigeria. We also know that CAC is subsequently preparing a regulation, so they are going to release that about how we are going to, or the roadmap to us complying with CAMA. So we also believe that we should also have a regulator among our panelists, and we decided to invite Mr. Kevin Amugo, who is the Director of Financial Regulation and Policy. He's going to be represented by our own Aminu Issa Buhari, who is going to talk on the implication of CAMA and the regulation and speak directly into what type of cascading down that we expect, especially for the financial, the banks and non-financial institutions. We also have on the lineup the Director of the Special Control Unit against money laundering in Nigeria, Mr. Nafi Baba Ahmed. I'm sure a lot of us are anxious to listen to him because is the man of the moment as far as the faith-based organizations are concerned. So we expect that he's also going to do justice to his own presentation. He's going to look at what level of regulatory roadmap should we expect as far as SCUM is concerned in relation to CAMA 2020. As practitioners and professionals within the AML CFT compliance community, we work with 4 tools. We work with policies. Policy is very, very important to us in compliance because we need to situate and internalize the laws and the regulation to fit into the structure of our different companies. So the policy is the one that speaks to how we are going to set up our programs, our processes, our procedures to be able to deliver our job. So we expect to listen to our guru in the house, the president of the Compliance Institute Nigeria, our own Patterson Polega, who in his years of experience in the business as one of the founding fathers of compliance in Nigeria, to also be able to give us his own perspective on how to deal with the customer due diligence issues, the issues surrounding KYC and EDD. And lastly, we all by now know that the ultimate beneficial ownership register will now be compiled by CAC in the bid to introduce more transparency into the ownership of companies in Nigeria. We have nominated Mr. Lateef Dabiri, who is going to be represented by his vice chairman. Mr. Lateef Dabiri is the chairman of the Association of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks in Nigeria, but is ably represented by his deputy, Mr. Ibrahim Bello, is also the Chief Compliance Officer of Coronation. So with this lineup, I can assure all those watching and listening to us that the next 3 years is going to be packed with very interesting facts and illumination into all our inquiries. And just like the moderators have said, we may not be able to take all the questions during the Q&A because we need to run as much as possible and manage our time. So if it happens that your questions are not attended to now, you can also send your questions to info@datapro-nigeria.net. We will make sure that all inquiries and all questions are given the necessary attention and you will get the appropriate responses. So without wasting much of our time, I'd like to once again thank everyone for giving us this opportunity and for us joining hands together with us to brainstorm on what will be beneficial to our community and to our country at large. I wish all of us very fruitful deliberation and a time well spent. Thank you. Dele, over to you, please.
All right. Thank you very much for that welcome address. Without further ado, I have the honor to invite the representative of the Director General of GIABA, Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa. That is in person of Dr. Bruno Nduka, to take the floor for the first presentation. Dr. Bruno, sir, you are welcome, sir. You can share your screen now and go ahead with your presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Can they permit me now to share my screen, please? So, can you see my screen, please? Hello?
Yes, your screen is on now, and we can see.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. All right, thank you very much. On behalf of our DG, Mr. Abba, I want to thank the founder of DataPro and his team for inviting us to be part of this historic event. I've been asked to speak on deficiencies in AML CFT compliance regime in Nigeria and CAMA. Like the founder noted, Nigeria has just undergone the second round of mutual evaluation. With that, it means that we no longer concentrate on the needs of the first round, but on the second round. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the mutual evaluation report of Nigeria has not been discussed, and it will be premature for me to begin to give specific findings and recommendations. But I will be providing a general overview of what is happening in our region, which is also not peculiar to a specific country, but Nigeria is also affected accordingly. We approach my presentation as follows. Look at the overview of AML CFT framework, the benchmark for conducting that, which is the FATF standard. Then look at who are the stakeholders in terms of public-private sector nexus. And then how do we conduct the assessment? Because for you to talk of deficiencies, you must know the ingredient for the assessment. And then what are the key implementation challenges that are coming up from the assessment we have carried out, including that of Nigeria, and then recommended actions, and then the place of CAMA 2020 within the AML CFT compliance regime, and then CAMA and beneficial ownership. So in general, AML CFT regime, when we talk of it, consists of the international standard, the legal framework from both the national framework or what we may call regional framework like we have for the UMR countries, and then other enforceable means like regulations that are issued by the regulators and supervisory bodies. And then all these are designed to help in fighting money laundering and terrorist financing, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that the systems, in particular the financial systems, are not misused for the purpose of laundering the process of crime. And the three pillars of AML CFT are to dictate, to deter, and to disrupt, with the ultimate goal of ensuring global peace, security, and good governance. At the core of this campaign is what all of us know, which is the FATF, or the Financial Action Task Force standard. That is the internationally acceptable AML CFT standard that has been designed in line with several enforcement instruments. The standard consists of 40 recommendations along with its interpretive notes and then 11 immediate outcomes. And these recommendations and immediate outcomes are to be implemented by countries and their institutions. The institutions can be public and private, and under private, we have the core private, and we also have what we call the third or the voluntary sector. So these are key in the implementation. And in terms of the nexus between the public and private sector in the AML CFT stratum, you will see that the public sector looks at the preventive and deterrent aspect of it, while, the private sector is looking at the preventive side of it, while the public sector is looking at dictating and also deterring. And for the private sector, which constitutes the financial institutions, the DNFBPs, and other designated non-financial institutions, what is central there is that they are to provide customer information, which involves coming up with suspicious transaction reports, other reports, records, and then risk assessment of the money laundering and terrorist financing vulnerabilities within their operations. Then the public sector, which consists of law enforcement agencies, supervisors, police agencies, revenue agencies, the judiciary, the FIU, and so on, that they are to use this information to also conduct risk assessment and then request for information, conduct supervision, including come up with some remedial actions, and then provide feedback. So with this, the private sector and the public sector are supposed to be working in tandem to ensure that the AML CFT regime of a particular country is moving as expected. It is not a master-servant relationship. It is collaborative and cooperative. So in order to assess the compliance of the country, which consists of the country and the institutions, we always do this through a process we call mutual evaluation. And this is simply conducted using the FATF recommendations and the associated methodology that is revised from time to time. There are two broad components of the assessment. We have the technical compliance components, that is looking at just the mechanical aspect, the kind of institutions you have in place, the arrangements you have in place. But after the first round of our mutual evaluation, which is the third round for the FATF countries, it was recognized that it is no longer adequate to just concentrate on those mechanical aspects. Let us see to what extent our desired result being achieved, and that is why the effectiveness of the AML CFT system became eminent. And on the basis of that, the 40 recommendations were consolidated into 11 immediate outcomes. In carrying out the evaluation, look at one core thing you must start with is the issue of risk and context of the country. On the basis of that, you'll be able to now say, okay, let us look at how this impacts on the 40 recommendations. And then on the basis of that, cascade it to the effectiveness regime of the country. And then you come up with what we call integrated conclusion and recommendation. These are the relationship between the 40 recommendations and the immediate outcomes. You can see that for each immediate outcome, there is an associated FATF recommendations. There are 11 immediate outcomes, starting with risk and coordination up to the IO11 dealing with proliferation, and each has the related FATF recommendations. So they are not done in isolation. What do we look for? There are four main areas when we are conducting assessment. You look at the nature and extent of money laundering and terrorist financing risk. Look at issue of materiality, the structural elements, and other contextual issues. With respect to nature and extent of money laundering and terrorist financing risk, we want to look at what are the various types of income generating crime in the country, the level, and then in terms of terrorism, what are the active terrorist groups and how are they funded? How do they raise their fund? How do they move it and so on? Then we also look at the exposure to cross-border flow of criminal or illicit funds. And I don't know how many of us, if you can lay your hands on the recent report by GFI, that is Global Financial Integrity on Illicit Financial Flow, you will see that our regions, particularly Sub-Saharan Africa, are also leading in terms of the quantum of IFFF that has been accumulated for a period of 10 years. And that is denying us the needed resources for sustainable development in our countries and the region. Then in terms of materiality, you want to look at the relative importance of the different types of financial institutions, including the DNFBPs. The DNFBPs has so many subsectors, including the NPOs. What kind of risk do you also associate with that? Then the size and integration and makeup of the financial sector. The moment your financial sector is up to $5 billion US, then it is considered at the global AML CFT level as a country that is susceptible to high risk from its relationship with others. Then what is the relative importance of these different types of financial products and institutions that our financial institutions are offering our customers? Then what of the amount of business that is associated to domestic and cross-border? We need to look at this. To what extent is the economy cash-based? Do we have an estimate of the size of the informal sector and our shadow economy? Then the population size, the level of development of the country, the geographical factor. You take Nigeria, for instance, we border with Niger, with Chad, and so on. These have implication in terms of implementation of our AML CFT regime. Then in terms of the other countries that we have relationship with, in terms of trading or cultural link, will this affect our AML CFT regime? So these are things that the assessment will take care of. Then with respect to cultural and structural elements, you talk of political stability. We have seen what is political stability is also in terms of the nature of the democracy that a country is running, a country where you find that political parties don't allow for freedom of speech. That is also likely to affect the way AML CFT regime is being managed in the country. Then the stability of institutions is also very, very key. That in terms of even the retention and appointment of the headship of such place, these are very key in terms of ensuring integrity, transparency, and accountability. Then the rule of law. Do we just apply the rule at our own whims and caprices and only affect some segment that some people are forgiven when they join or move from one political party to another? These are things we need to look at. Then in terms of the system, particularly the judicial system, how capable, independent, and efficient is this? Is it a system where we talk of adjudication of cases within a very limited time so that you don't drag cases forever? We have seen cases in our region that AML CFT cases are dragged for long, and at the end, the criminal or the identified criminal gang continue to enjoy the process of their crime and even use it to even exploit the system and get back to the system. Then other contextual factors, you look at the maturity and sophistication of the regulatory and supervisory regime in the country. Then level of corruption and the impact of measures to combat this corruption, and level of financial exclusion. These are the key factors that assessment will look at. And on the basis of that, we now carry out the assessment. And for the first second round of our mutual evaluation, we have conducted the on-site visits to about 9 countries currently, but only 5 reports have been fully discussed and adopted and published. And that is that of Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Ghana, Mali, and Senegal. We actually started with Ghana and then followed by Senegal, Cabo Verde, Burkina Faso, and Mali in that order. And with respect to the effectiveness regime, this is the picture we are having. Apart from Ghana, that's called what we call substantial effectiveness in just IO2, which is dealing with international cooperation. You can see that the result from the 5 countries are not encouraging. And this has actually placed the 5 countries in a kind of follow-up regime that all of them are also within the ICRG process of the FATF, that is the International Cooperation Review Group, meaning that at any point in time, if we do not address the deficiencies, we can be declared as countries that are not having adequate AML CFT regime, and that can affect so many things in the country, affect investment, affect even the way citizens are treated when you travel outside their country to especially these advanced countries. And Nigeria happened to be one of those countries that have been treated like that in the past. So unfortunately, I cannot disclose the result of Nigeria for now because it has not been discussed. It will be Nigeria with mutual evaluation along with that of Benin and Sierra Leone will be discussed at our 34th plenary in December. So after that, we can now publish, after following what we call the quality and consistency framework of the global AML CFT regime. And then we'll be able to now begin to actually make reference to such report. But we have not seen whether things will actually change from the picture we are seeing now. And some of you that were involved in that evaluation, I'm sure you would have seen the initial report, and it is not a death sentence. What you need to do is to begin to look at the vulnerabilities and develop strategies to address them. In terms of the prevalent predicate offenses we have noticed in our region, which if you also just suppose the countries that have not been discussed, you will also find this as prevalent. Number 1 is corruption, embezzlement, illicit arrangement, and so on. And then we have drug trafficking, we have terrorism and terrorist financing and organized crime, we have fraud, including cyber crime, we have tax crime, we have robbery and theft, we have human trafficking and migrant smuggling. These are key predicate offenses of money laundering that are prevalent in our region. Then the result I have just shown you what were the key implementation challenges. One is that in all the countries we have discovered that there is still limited understanding of money laundering and terrorist financing risk. While some sectors like the financial sector may be better, but the insurance sector, the security sector, the DNFBP may not be the same. And what we look at is the impact of the risk from such sector, because if you talk of the NFBP, like the MPOs, its impact may be more than what you will notice in another. So that is why we have been talking of a risk-based approach. And then some countries that have conducted their NRA, they have not been updating it to incorporate emerging money laundering and terrorist financing risk. Then the legal framework of most of our countries are inadequate. They have not been addressed. They have not addressed completely some of the issues that are even raised in the first round. When you talk of terrorist financing, most of our countries have not been talking of terrorist financing for specific purposes, and that is very, very key. Then we have institutions that are weak in terms of independence, in terms of autonomy, and this is a major challenge. Then our supervisory regime and enforcement actions are also not effective. Then preventive measures by accountable institutions is also inadequate. These are issues that we need to look at. Then the capacity of our competent authorities in terms of skills, in terms of attitude, in terms of knowledge, And this had to do mostly with the way we retain our personnel in some of these institutions. We have noticed that from time to time, we don't have personnel where we manage our AML CFT regime. And the sanctions that have been meted have not been dissuasive, they are not proportionate, a situation that makes the crime not to be seen as a deterrent. So limited capacity also for investigation and prosecution. Sometimes even the way the law enforcement agencies will present their case becomes somehow ineffective, that the court can easily dismiss such cases. Then we have not been able to provide adequate statistics to show the level of convictions in our countries. Sometimes emphasis are more on the predicate offenses instead of the money laundering and terrorist financing offenses. What we are interested in is how did you follow the money, and not what crime did you commit to get the money. We know you have committed a crime, but follow the money is an issue. Then in terms of financial intelligence, most of our countries do not have sufficient intelligence that will assist investigation, and some of them are not well crafted to also assist investigation and prosecution. And then countries do not see the issue of AML CFT as a priority. They do not give adequate resources. And now they are using the pandemic to even come up with excuses that the pandemic is now what is important. But from the study we have just conducted at the FATF level and Java level, we have seen that there are so many criminal activities that are now associated with the emergence of COVID-19. Our major problem within our region, again, including Nigeria, is beneficial ownership information. These are not available, they are not updated, they are not publicly available, they cannot be easily accessed, so this is a process. I was happy this morning when Mighty sent me a link to show what Ghana is doing with reference to beneficial ownership. And I think this is one of the things we are also discussing here with the new CAMA. So this is important. Then in terms of our international cooperation, most of us don't even know the functions of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when it comes to mutual legal assistance. And these are processes we need to also look at in terms of facilitating the follow the money, so that extradition and other associated relationship will be conducted. Then at the national level, we have also experienced poor domestic coordination at both policy and operational level, that even those that are coordinating, even the mutual evaluation processes are not well grounded in that process. That is also affecting the supply of information to the assessment team, and which will also affect the result that countries will also get. Because if you don't provide the good, what is required, then the assessors are not magicians. They also go with what you provide. And this can also be affected because of the quality of the personnel that are also liaising with the assessment team. Then poor management of recovered stolen assets. I will leave you, Nigeria, to that. You have seen what is happening recently within the national discourse. So I'm sure that we'll be able to address that. So what are we recommending to address these challenges? One is that we need to continue to review the extant legal framework and infrastructure, including alignment of this to the national constitutions. Then look at other enforceable means. Are there things that are also usable, that also can be applied, are also acceptable in court? So we look at the comprehensiveness, the clarity, the delineation of powers, roles, and responsibilities. Then our institutions need to be strengthened. The functions, in terms of independence and autonomy, the judiciary, the financial intelligence unit, the supervisory and regulatory agencies, the company registry. Then we have what we call the supreme audit institutions, the electoral body, the anti-graft agencies, self-regulatory bodies. All this will help to promote the rule of law. As a former US president once noted, Africa needs strong institutions and not just strong individuals. We have noticed that in our region that agencies and institutions are working for the government in power and not for the country, and therefore are not able to apply their mandate appropriately. Then, because of the special nature of money laundering and terrorist financing issues, there is need for countries to look at the establishment of specialized institutions. We have seen cases where countries are now establishing financial crime courts. Ghana has that. And then we have some dedicated courts in our member countries for such cases. And then asset management agencies, instead of maybe having just one unit under a ministry, you can have a full-blown asset management agency with defined mandate. We need to improve the national and international cooperation. We need to ensure that our national risk assessment report is updated, disseminated, and then we need to ensure that at the end of it, we have good outreach program to the private sector and voluntary sector. So in terms of asset recovery and management, there are other informal agencies that are also playing roles there. We have what we call the AREWA, that is Asset Recovery Interagency Network for West Africa. These are agencies that bring in different institutions together to share information about stolen wealth and then how they can trace the money. Then we need to look at the deployment of effective preventive measures by reporting entities so that they will look at their risk management framework, look at how they treat politically exposed persons, their reporting obligations with respect to suspicious transactions. All these we need to do. Our sanctions must be dissuasive, effective, and proportionate. That is the only way you can deter criminals and prevent repeat of such crime. So in terms of access to information, especially beneficial ownership, it must be timely, comprehensive, and available. These are key. Then our cross-border movement of illicit funds, we need to look at the improvement in border management. Then we have said that one of the problems is issue of capacity. So we need to carry out holistic and integrated approach to capacity building to all sectors, the judiciary, the parliament, because the issue we are going to discuss today has to do with the parliamentarians, that they have passed the law and there are people who are challenging this. And then what is the involvement of the CSOs and the youth in all this? These are very key. So on that, I will now streamline the discussion to issue of CAMA. The CAMA, which is the Company and Allied Matters Act of 2020, is one of the legal framework that Nigeria is supposed to be using in the implementation of effective AML CFT regime. The overall objective there is to strengthen governance, but I will tell you that the main focus is on beneficial ownership. As the FATF defined it, beneficial owner refers to the natural person, that have ultimate control. So we need to look at this. And the FATF recommendation 24 and 25, as well as the immediate outcome 5, are the ingredients for looking at this, that we need to also use the CAMA to see whether we are also working well. When you talk of legal persons and arrangement, I will not bother you with the definition. I've provided it here, and then the common requirements that 25 and 24 have, and then what are the basic elements of the immediate outcome is to prevent the misuse of legal persons, ensure transparency, basic information are publicly available, and then the sanctions are applied that are effective, proportionate, and decisive. And then that legal persons and arrangements are no longer attractive to criminals. So what are the relevant FATF recommendations when it comes to CAMA? The provisions of CAMA are quite enriching from what I have read, covering a wide range of issues that is expected to assist us in the implementation of AML CFT regime in our region. When you talk of the preventive measures from recommendation 9 to 13 and 22 to 23, we're talking of customer due diligence, both by the financial institutions and designated non-financial business and professions. In terms of business registration requirements, qualifications of business owners, and then the record keeping. You have seen that in one of the provisions that companies are supposed to keep records for about 6 years, which is also in line with the FATF recommendations. Then we have seen that companies must not form political parties. Therefore, these are issues you look at when even they are making a business relationship with financial institutions. That when you begin to see funds moving from a company to political parties, you know, and then coming from maybe through individuals and so on. And then it is also preventing, by the time you know the address of the company, the location, and so on, it prevents the emergence of shell companies. Then in terms of beneficial ownership, you need to look at ownership structure, the information that is required, how available are these, or issue of disclosure requirements, and then issue of how shares should be transferred, and then the prohibition of bearer shares. They are also covered. These are things that the CAMA is also helping within the AML CFT regime. And then how do we also handle foreign companies? They are all covered. Then in terms of combating terror financing, which relates to those MPOs at risk, where you always use the word MPOs at risk, which means it is not all MPOs that are at risk. So we need to also be mindful of that at recommendation 8 and the IO 10. Then supervision and regulation, they are also covered there. The sanctions regime are also covered. What kind of penalties that the regulator should apply and so on. These are things that are covered within the CAMA, which I'm sure by the time they are discussed further by other panelists, you will begin to find the ingredients. But these are things that we appreciate from the CAMA. Then, in terms of improving guidance for the FIs and the NLPs in conducting their CD, this is quite encouraging. And then adequate assessment of risk is important. These are things we are saying that the CAMA is doing. And we conclude by saying appropriate deployment. Appropriate is the word there, because we have seen why people are talking against it. You don't mismanage the process. Then I'm sure that CAMA can lead to effective implementation of AML CFT regime in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We want to appreciate that very insightful delivery from your end. And I also listened through the presentation, and when I saw the outcome of those 5 countries and situated with Nigeria, I begin to, entertain some level of fear. But we also note what we need to do and what CAMA has done already. So we want to appreciate your presentation, sir. To the end of your presentation, I only have 2 questions. I am not sure those questions are, but one that is specific has to do with designated non-financial institution. I think that question is coming from Abba Yusuf. He wants to know, yes, he wants to know why churches and mosques, that is religious bodies, are regarded as a business entity, even though they are known as charitable organization globally. I think that's the question from him. I don't think that question relates to your presentation, except you want to take it. Maybe that person is trying to preempt the Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission, and also the Director of SCUMO. So, but if you want to take it, sir, you can still go ahead and take it.
Well, since SCUMUL is here and the Registrar General is here, I think they will be able to provide a better answer. But from anti-money laundering side, JABA, FATF, and the global AML CFT, religious bodies, churches and mosques, directly like that, are not classified in the way as MPOs, directly like that. If a church has part of its activity in terms of doing charitable work that requires maybe receipt of fund and application of the fund, not the church processes or the way the mosque is organized, but activity that they carry out is what you look at. So we need to take note of that, because I think people are, if you take, for instance, the Catholic Church, the headquarters is in Vatican City. The Vatican City is seen as an entity different from the Catholic Church. So the Vatican City is subjected to mutual evaluation and not the Catholic Church. So that is what you have to take note of, that it is not the church or the mosque itself, but if they have an affiliate activity that will lead to supervision, they will do that. That is our understanding. But maybe the Registrar General and the SCUMUL Director will help us to clarify their own understanding from Nigerian side of it.
All right, thank you very much. I have two more questions, and that will be the last we'll be asking under your segment. We will appreciate if this can be answered in about 1 minute. The first one is from Badejoko Kabiru. He wants to know, why did the assessment was limited to just 5 countries? And number 2, it said there is another one from Umar. That's the second question. It says, what's the level of collaboration from developed country where illicit funds were moved from Africa? And that will be all that will be taken under your segment, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why did the assessment on limited to 5 countries? Like I said, presently we have completed 9 assessments. Out of the 9 assessments, only 5 of the assessment reports have been discussed and adopted. And the procedure is that you can only publish those that have been adopted and discussed after following what we call the quality and consistency framework. And that is why the report of Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Ghana, Mali, and Senegal are the ones presented. Nigeria, Benin Republic, and Sierra Leone, and Niger, their reports have not been discussed. They are called draft mutual evaluation report, because at the point of discussion, the ratings can change. The countries can make arguments that will lead to change. It can be upward review, it can be downward review, depending on the discussion and the argument at the discussion point, which we call the plenary. So that is why we have this. We don't disclose the results that have not been adopted. So you bear with us. After December, which may take 2 or 3 months after December to finalize the Q and C issue relating to those reports before Nigerian report will be discussed. And I can tell you too that a report can also be rejected at the point of discussion, and then the report will be sent back for review further, which may take another long time. So that is why presentation is limited to 5 countries. What is the level of collaboration from developed countries where the illicit financial flows were moved from Africa? The entire world is involved in this AML CFT regime, and that is why the issue of collaboration is important. Where your FIU is not a member of the global FIU network, which we call the Egmont Group, it becomes difficult for your country to be accessing information and sharing information. And that affects the collaboration with other countries. Where your supervisors do not also respond, either spontaneously or otherwise, to requests from other countries, is also an issue. So all we need to do is to see whether our own cooperation framework through our mutual legal assistance framework, whether is yielding the desired result. So this is an issue in our region that MLA is a problem. The way we request, the way we respond has also affected the collaboration with other countries in terms of tracing, in terms of recovery of these illicit funds. So this is what happens. I will also enjoin you to read the 2019 report by the Global Financial Integrity on illicit financial flow. You'll be able to see what is happening to our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those responses. At this point in time, we allow you to rest, hoping that you will stay true till the end of the program with us, so that in the event that we have more questions regarding the international and regional that require international and regional inputs in terms of response, we'll be able to call.
Sorry, I'm seeing a hand. Ayode Tolu.
Okay, no, they are not allowed to raise hand. They are supposed to type it in. It's part of the ground rule.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
So at this point in time, I'd like to bring up the representative of the Registrar General Corporate Affairs Commission, that's Malam Heji Abubakar, who is ably represented by Mr. Tolulope Shonaike for the next presentation. Mr. Tolulope, you are welcome, sir. You can go ahead and share your slide at this point, and we would like to listen to you in the next 20 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Tolokwe, you have the floor, sir. Mr. Tolulope, we seems not to be hearing you. I don't know if you are talking already. I will just. Yes. Do you have his phone? Please, can you call him? Okay. Yes, sir. Um, Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we seems to be having some kind of technical issue with Mr. Tolu's presentation. So in view of that, we'll might need to take the next presenter, and that is the presentation from the Director, Financial Policy and Regulation, CBN. Amiable Director is being represented by another boss of mine, and that is Mr. Isa Aminu Buhari, who is going to be taking the third presentation. Hoping that before the end of that, we would have resolved the technicalities around the second presentation. Mr. Aminu Buhari, you can please go ahead and share your screen for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see my screen now? Good afternoon.
Thank you. We can see your screen. We can see it, sir.
So you can see the presentation?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. My name is Aminu Isa Buhari. As Dele has said, I'm here. I'm making a small presentation here regarding some AML CFT regulatory issues that emanate or potentially emanate from the new provisions made by in the new CAMA. As you are aware, the President signed it into law on the 7th of August 2020. This new CAMA has been awaited for over 3 decades now. Anybody who is in the AML CFT function will know that it has the former act that was repealed has been highly inadequate in a lot of areas, especially on transparency areas regarding to beneficial ownership information and what have you. So it was a welcome relief for every one of us to see that the president has signed it into law now, and the provisions made are robust, to say the least. So I will just go through some of the major highlights, which I expected our man from corporate governance, if his presentation was successful earlier, to have made in his presentation. So I will just flip through them because I'm very sure he will give us further explanation on them. Some of the highlights in that act that cut across corporate governance issues, transparency issues, ease of doing business issues, measures, and some other restrictions or reduction to regulatory hurdles, making it easier for people to form companies and making it easier for the gatekeepers to keep the appropriate records. Some of the major highlights included the exemption from appointment of company secretary, highlighted in Section 330, and the enhancing of the minority shareholders protection and engagement in Section 256, which restricts firms from appointing a director to hold the office of the chairman and chief executive officer of a private company, which is also a corporate governance issue. Replacement of authorized share capital with the minimum share capitals in Section 27. Provision for electronic filing, which will also help in ease of doing business. Introduction of statement of compliance. This one we will have a very good look at it at the Compliance Institute to see how we can come in to make it more robust and ensure that all aspects of compliance are covered in such a statement. Also, there is a provision on relating to single member shareholder companies in Section 18, subsection 2 of the Act. Now makes it possible to establish a private company with only one member. It's also reducing regulatory hurdles. Restriction on multiple directorship in public companies, which prohibits a person from being a director in more than 5 public companies at a time. This is a welcome relief. Requirement of a common seal is also no longer mandatory. That is globally, it is no longer done anywhere else. So that one too is welcome. Most importantly, where I really want to dwell on is CAMA that have to do with beneficial ownership information and other transparency measures that have a knock-on effect on the effectiveness of our AML CFT regime. Sections 119 to 121 of the new Act provides for disclosure of persons with significant control of companies in a register of beneficial owners to enhance corporate accountability and transparency. These sections made several provisions relating to beneficial ownership disclosures. The Act provides that a director is considered to have significant control of a company if he holds by himself or by his nominee shares that entitle him to at least 5% of the company's shares. The Act also provides for penalty for non-compliance, which is the CAC will prescribe from time to time. It also provides for a beneficial ownership registry that will be updated because now companies are required by the Act to make the necessary disclosure for beneficial ownership, update it at least every year and render the returns annually. So the updating and the accuracy aspect of beneficial ownership, which was missing before, has been taken care of now. And it should also be timely accessible to stakeholders like the law enforcement officers, the supervisors, reporting entities. All these provisions are in compliance with Financial Action Task Force recommendations 24 and 25. They deal on transparency, on beneficial ownership and legal persons and legal arrangements, both in financial institutions and the DNFBPs as well. So the new CAMA has really come to address a very thorny issue in Nigeria's AML CFT regime that has really reduced or affected the effectiveness of the entire system in Nigeria. Because if CSC is supposed to be a very credible source of not only basic corporate information, but beneficial ownership information, and the information has to be very up-to-date, accurate, and it must be relevant. Most of the time, before this Act, these requirements are not there. You will see financial institutions, supervisory bodies, when they are doing their licensing functions, looking for where credible source of data to verify beneficial ownership or basic information, corporate information, where to verify from a veritable database. In the CAC, it has not been that credible. And if you look at some of the deficiencies that have been raised since 2007 by JAVA and FATF during the mutual evaluation of Nigeria since 2007. The report was issued in 2008. The issue of Corporate Affairs Commission database not being reliable, the issue of beneficial ownership information not being there at all, the lack of or non-existence of that within the country. The only source of beneficial ownership we had before this review of this act was the requirement in the CBN AML CFT regulation for financial institutions to obtain during onboarding and maintain that. And the problem with that information is that they have to verify it somewhere else. And if it is CAC that is the source of their verification, before now, the CAC didn't have the BO information. They have some basic information which was not usually updated. It was, this observation has been made since 2007. I'm not talking about the mutual evaluation of 2019 that has just concluded. The result is not out yet. But I'm talking about the mutual evaluation of 2007 that the results are public. So these deficiencies have existed in our MLCFT regime for almost 1 decade now, since 2007, when we finished this mutual evaluation exercise. So these provisions in the CAMA that have addressed these thorny issues are a welcome development. They are also in compliance. These provisions in this new CAMA are also in compliance with FATF immediate outcome 5, which deals with transparency also of legal persons and arrangements, and that it requires that these legal persons arrangements are prevented from misuse for money laundering or terrorist financing, and information on their beneficial ownership is available to competent authorities without impediment. So you can see some of the sections I have quoted earlier have helped in ensuring that only the right people get to own these companies, and a check is put on them by monitoring and asking them to send in returns yearly to show that these institutions are not being used, or they are not vulnerable to being used for money laundering and terrorism financing. And also the provisions in the beneficial ownership for the provision of the registry, BOI registry, also ensures that competent authorities would have access to the beneficial ownership registry when it is fully implemented. This we're here, I'm talking about potentially how it can improve the effectiveness of our MLCFT in the whole country. This single act can do that. Believe you me, we know what we go through during mutual evaluation exercises when it comes to issues of CAC and CAMA. There were a lot of deficiencies, but this new act has addressed most of them in regarding to AML CFT. Also, I've already discussed the lack of transparency measures in our that was observed by JAVA during our mutual evaluation exercise, and that these provisions have addressed them. And so, we, the regulators, our expectation is that the CAC would embark on effective implementation of these new beneficial ownership information measures by ensuring the UBO registry is updated with accurate BO information on an ongoing basis. The UBO registry should also be made timely accessible to all stakeholders. This will aid regulators in their licensing functions, and FIs and DNFIs in their KYC, CBD, and EDD practices. Because when we are licensing organizations like the banks, FIs, BDCs, finance companies, mortgage banks, we get the information from the directors, the promoters. We ask them to disclose any beneficial ownership information they have. But even when they do, before now, we don't have any credible source of verifying that information. Even the basic corporate information has not been that accurate and reliable with the CAC. But with this new registry of beneficial ownership, if well implemented, our licensing function will also improve. And that will also affect what? IO3 supervision. So it has a contagion effect on so many other things. It will also help the KYC, the effectiveness of KYC measures and compliance by the financial institutions, because now they have a reliable database. They can always verify their information, KYC information against. This will improve the preventive measures, the quality of preventive measures within the financial system, within the financial institutions. This will also improve the effectiveness of what? IO4, which is preventive measures. So there is a lot of contagion effect and knock-on effects on other areas of supervision and AML CFT regime. Reporting entities are also expected to pay greater attention now. That is what we're saying to the regulators on the registration details of all legal entities and monitor them for possible abuse and misuse for money laundering, terrorism financing, and other criminal activities. It is expected that compliance with UBO information measures by reporting entities will dramatically improve if these measures, provisions in the new CAMA are fully implemented, so that in the areas of verification of BO information, keeping it up to date and accurate, the financial institutions will dramatically improve in their compliance in those areas. Regulatory guidance will definitely be given accordingly to financial institutions under our purview. Regulatory activities should also be expected in the area of corporate governance, as the CAMA 2020 has made several provisions in this area. I can go on and on and on, but my time is about 20 minutes and I would love to conclude here. The new CAMA has brought about the needed measures regarding AML CFT policies and regulations, especially in the area of beneficial ownership information disclosures. Financial regulators now need to consider reviewing policies, regulations, and supervisory strategies to ensure compliance with the new changes in the Act by reporting entities. The CBN, on its part, efforts necessary to facilitate the effective implementation of CAMA 2020 as it relates to financial institutions under the regulatory purview of the CBN. Thank you for listening. Dele.
Thank you very much, sir. I always know that those who manage the managers of money are very time conscious, and we want to thank you for that. I think the questions all to start rolling in now, but I believe that your presentation was so taken with so much keen interest that I do not have a record of any question for you.
That is
perhaps in perhaps in the course of the program, we have a question that we think should be appropriately taken by the regulator. We will not mind coming back to you. Thank you so much, sir. So at this point in time, I hope Mr. Tolulope Shonaike is ready.
I am here now.
You can never be too sure with technology at times.
All right.
All right. So can you share your slide so that we can take your presentation?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you're seeing my slide now. My slides. Just a moment. Sorry, are you seeing it?
Not really yet.
Oh.
I have an indication that you are sharing a screen, but
oh, yeah, I'm not seeing it.
So yes. I'm told that you may need to open your PowerPoint. Have you done that?
It's open.
Can you double click it?
I'm doing just that.
All right, sir. You know what we are going to do from here?
Yes.
You can send in your PowerPoint presentation to us. We'll open it from here. Then we give you control. Then so that you can make presentation from your hand.
Okay.
I hope that. So while you are doing that, I will be taking the next presenter. All right. You can unshare at this point in time. Okay. Thank you. The fourth presentation, which is expected changes in KYC, CDD, and EDD practices among FIs and DNFIs due to CAMA 2020. And to take that is the president of Compliance Institute Nigeria, and in person of Mr. Patterson Bolea. Mr. Patterson, sir, you have the floor. You can share your screen at this point.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen very clearly.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Patterson, and my job has actually been made very easy for me. I thank Data Pro and founder Mr.
I am sorry, sir. I'm sorry to cut you in, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I was going to say that you should please kindly put it in presentation mode. Okay. But you've done that already.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So quickly, I have just 10-15 minutes to go through this because a lot of the work has been done by the previous speakers, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to just say a few things just to top up. For the benefit of those who are probably coming in contact with some of the terminologies you are seeing here, I think it would be nice for me to just explain what they are. So let's not assume that everybody here is an AML CFT expert. You will see words, phrases like KYC. KYC is know your customer. CDD is customer due diligence. And EDD is enhanced due diligence. Again, KYC is know your customer. CDD is customer due diligence, and EDD is enhanced due diligence. So I hope that helps. As I just quickly go through, a lot of things have been said. So I just, so as to save time, I want to just go straight to what we're going to be discussing today. But before I go straight in there, just to remind you, although Dr. Bonu has mentioned this, and my dear Vice President of the Institute, Mr. Isa Buhari, has also mentioned it. Just to remind us that what is customer due diligence from the FATF recommendation plan? Identifying the customer, verifying the customer's identity, and using independent sources of benchmarking that verification. Identifying the beneficial owner, which Mr. Buhari talked extensively about, taking steps to make sure that you can verify their identity also. And as a financial institution or designated financial institution, you ensure that you are able to also identify any legal structures or arrangements that involve beneficial owners and to understand the nature of the control that they have. Understanding and as appropriately also obtaining information as to the intended nature of the business relationship that you're going into. And then, of course, lastly, an ongoing continuous due diligence, which this new CAMA has actually made very, very important, as you will soon see. Ongoing due diligence, because what this CAMA has done, from what Mr. Buhari told us earlier too, is it's now going to make us continuously check certain parameters that it has put in place by way of governance and controls. So you don't just take a certificate and of incorporation and you open an account and you say that is it. No, you have to then continuously monitor what happens in the nature of the structure of the ownership of the control of the nature of business being done on an ongoing basis. So this new CAMA has made that requirements very, very important for financial institutions and designated non-financial businesses. So again, like I said, I don't want to go into this long haul because I think a lot of this have already been mentioned here. So I'll just go straight to talk about what are the requirements in the new CAMA 2020 and how are they going to affect KYC, CDD, and then EDD. Suffice it to note from the previous definition of FATF, what FATF said, that KYC is not just about documentation. But that is the wrong notion that sometimes we have when we do our KYC in our offices, I mean the operators. We think that KYC is only about ticking the box. Utility bill is there. Certificate of incorporation is there. Identity card is there. No, it goes far more than, in fact, the significant proportion of KYC has to do with what you are not seeing physically. And that is what this new CAMA has actually further stressed for us. So those of us who just merely tick off the box and don't go and read the MEMAT and read the nature of control and read whether the changes have happened in terms of shares that have moved, listen very carefully to some of these requirements. Number one, the Act, there's a section that talks about definition of substantial shareholder in a public company. In the old Act, the definition of a substantial shareholder of a public company as a person that holds by himself or through nominees 10% of the restricted voting rights at the general meeting. In the 2020 Act, that definition has been reduced to 5% of the unrestricted voting rights at the general meeting. What does this imply for KYC? This has actually solved the problem of ultimate beneficial ownership and bringing it in line with what some regulatory bodies like the Central Bank has already done in the CBN AML CFT regulation. And this actually further helps us to define who our ultimate beneficiary owner is from the very onset, before you go into the nature of control and all of that. So this is kudos for the CAMA 2020. Another one is ultimate beneficial ownership, which again, like I said, Mr. Buhari has also dealt significantly into. So I won't go much into that. Just know that the significant impact of this is that there's no more hiding place for beneficial owners of any logo structures now in the country. So this will enable us to have full access to their information. The next one is number of directors for small companies. In the old CAMA, there were no specific provisions for this. But in this new CAMA, it says small companies may have one director. So it has made it even clearer. I know that on a day-to-day basis in our offices, this has always been the issue. You know, when we're trying to establish the Form 001 and in the incorporation documentation as to how many directors should there be. This has helped us to simplify apart from simplifying the process of creating a business, it has also created another problem, which we now have to enhance our due diligence process, because it has created some governance issues there. Because what that means is that one person can actually own a legal structure and control it. So here we need to enhance our due diligence. We need to increase the amount of information we now collect on the single person and control of that business. So this is more work for us. And then companies seal. I think Mr. Buhari also talked about that. The new act gives companies the flexibility of having common seals, where a company decides to just have one. So this helps to simplify business, but now it creates another problem for due diligence. But let me clear here now is that it makes it now more difficult for you to authenticate documents. Before, you used to rely on the fact that the seals are controlled and they are managed in use. And so when you see it in a document, I mean, you can beat your chest that this document is okay. Now you won't have that. So what are we going to do as practitioners? It means we need to now look for other means of authenticating documents and to then apply those means, particularly electronic and digital means, because what this section has done is to encourage digital dissemination of corporate documents. And so you now have to also use digital means to authenticate these documents. So we need to invest in digital eKYC. Now, requirement to have secretary. I mean, again, this has also created another problem, because when you used to have secretary, it means you have somebody who is very knowledgeable in the law, in CAMA, who sits with the company to guide them and help them so that they can keep within the governance and all that. And again, penalties have been introduced. So you will need somebody like that. But now the new CAMA has said you don't need. So that gives more work to those of us who are you need to now enhance your due diligence particularly when you are onboarding small companies. So all those businesses like emerging businesses and small retail businesses become very vulnerable in this area, because they don't need to have secretaries anymore. So you need to enhance the due diligence measures around that area. Now, like I said, this new act has promoted digitalization of the CDD, EDD, and KYC measures. So section 101 says that a document or proceeding requiring authentication by a company may be signed by a director, secretary, or other authorized officer of the company, and need not be signed as a deed unless otherwise so required in this particular part. Signature is deemed to satisfy the required digitalization efforts in the country. With the large number of fintechs we have now, it has changed. You must definitely then make laws like this that will enable us. Need for us to ensure that we provide electronic and digital methodologies to authenticate documents for all due diligence processes we carry on. Other implications for the new CAMA, section 22, where they talk about the private may be restricted in the transfer of its shares. Again, like I said, this is emphasizing the need for FIs and DNFIBs to do continuous due diligence processes, because if you don't do that, you may not be able to track changes that are happening as shares are moving. You need to be sure that if there's a change, every time there's a request by your customer to say they want to do a change in signatory, you must verify that they have complied with the requirements to disclose to the CAC. This is an additional measure that we must carry out. And you don't have to wait even until the customer comes to make a change. It is mandatory on us now to make sure that on a periodic basis we go and check what are the structure we knew about this company ownership and control still persists or it has changed. So this is additional due diligence work we need to do as compliance officers. To section 26, the consent of the AG in registering companies limited by guarantee. It has changed. In the past, it was the AG, but now they've said even if the AG does not do that within 30 days, the CAC can actually, give its consent and move on. This is good. It's going to enable business move quickly, and it will enable people register companies to open accounts with us with ease, and we can also verify their details. However, we should make sure that our search, whenever we are doing our search, we include a line that will enable us know whether this aspect has been complied with. Very critical for search results now. And then section 27, replace authorized share capital for companies with minimum share capital. What this has done is that instead of having a sterilized figure for share capital, it means it is now based on the minimum share capital of the company. So this is where, again, reviewing your MEMAT of your company and ensuring that it is continuously updated when there are changes becomes very pertinent for the compliance officer. And then section 35, which says unless a company specifically restrict the object, now it has become an omnibus clause. The object clause is no longer restricted by what you put in the MEMAT. It is open. You can do anything except you say you don't want to do it. That has significant implications for DNFIBs, and I'm sure my Oga Mohammed will talk extensively about that. It means for us, we have to make sure that in banks, FIs, and destination financial institutions, we should make sure that we then take more measures to determine whether a company is carrying out what I call in quotes here, cumulable activities. So that becomes even more expedient with the new CAMA requirement. Now, other implications include section 824. I'm not going to go into those controversial issues, but the CAC has the power to determine the classification of associations. So what CAC is now telling us that, unlike in the past, they are now going to be doing their own proper due diligence. And this is good for the financial institutions and the NFIBs, because it then means that a whole lot of due diligence will be done at the CAC end, and we should take full advantage of it going forward. Then that's good for due diligence purposes. The 753 says 2 or more persons associated with carrying on a lawful business can enter into a limited liability partnership. This is new. Limited liability partnership. This is new. So what this then means is that in our risk assessment of customer types, we used to say, okay, that if you are a limited liability company, you are less riskier than if you are a partnership, you are less riskier than a limited liability company. But with this, it means that there are some partnerships that the individual partners will still have the limited liability status. It means our due diligence measures in how we determine the legal status of partnerships must be properly watched, and we must include this new section and this new requirement. And this same kind of limited liability partnerships are now being allowed to be incorporated by those who are not incorporated in Nigeria, being able to come and do business in Nigeria. Again, an improvement in doing business easily in Nigeria, but again, giving us as the compliance officers more work to do to ensure that we check how they were properly registered in their country of origin, and the additional duty measures we have for non-resident institutions comes to play in here. We have to heighten those measures. And again, section 265 says the chairman of a public company shall not act as the chief executive officer. This is very good for purpose of governance, and it will help us also improve on how to check ownership structures and how they are run. Again, this helps our due diligence process. Then section 275 says a public company shall have at least 3 independent directors. Again, this has also enhanced due diligence. These are some of the measures that Mr. Buhari was talking about. That is so beautiful in this new CAMA that will enable us have proper governance processes that can enable us have proper due diligence within legal structures. So it's a very good one. And also section 283, which says that a person suspended or removed as a director under the Act shall be disqualified from being a director. So again, due diligence is ongoing, continuous. So when you are now taking a CSC document and you see somebody mentioned as a director, it means you need to go and find out the history of the director. Has he been suspended in the past? This is a mandatory thing now for us to do as compliance officers. Okay. So, furthermore, good governance practices that have been introduced, like Mr. Buhari said, include where the directors, where persons shall not be a director in more than 5 public companies. Again, so as to make people concentrate on their area of competence instead of being in everywhere and not concentrating in governing the particular companies. Again, this has improved ability of our compliance officers now to rely on the governance structures that this new CAMA has put in place and help to reduce and simplify our due diligence processes. And then, of course, state companies' obligation to maintain a register, which Mr. Buhari has talked about that before. So now all directors will have their information easily available for us to know the ultimate beneficial owner easily. So this has been made possible by the new CAMA. So I hope I've not been able to exhaust everything within the short time, but maybe when questions come, we'll be able to address some. This new CAMA has introduced measures to ease doing of business in Nigeria, quite all right. And but following that also, it has introduced some more additional due diligence requirements and governance requirements. However, it has also introduced more risks in customer due diligence processes by making it easy for corporate structures to be set up. And nevertheless, the Act has also provided mitigating controls to enable us manage this increased EDD and CDD measures that we also need to carry out. And so my final word to all FIs and designated non-financial businesses are, you are required to then go sit down with your colleagues, your stakeholders in your organizations to look at your policies and procedures and ensure that these new measures are properly embedded into our policies. And we don't just stop there. We must train our staff and make them knowledgeable of these new changes and to understand the extent of the risks and the mitigants that are embedded in this new CAMA. But that's by so doing, I'm sure we'll be ready to contribute to the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing and proliferation in our country. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful presentation. I listened all through with very rapt attention, and I want to believe that other stakeholders are equally listening as well. As you were ending the presentation, we had about 5 questions, and I think that some of those questions are actually meant for the Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission. But apparently in the course of your presentation, you actually answered one. And I think Mr. Akinola Olukunle will note that he wanted to know why the limited liability companies are now expected to appoint secretary. I think the proper answer is that the answer now, based on your presentation, is that it is no longer necessary. And you even went ahead to also mention the implication of not having secretary today, especially the import on corporate governance. So I don't think it's a question I want to also repeat again. But there is one question from Sagai Gaye. I hope I pronounced that name well enough. He wants to know what qualify, because in the course of your presentation, you mentioned small companies. And so you want to know what qualify a company as big or small in Nigeria for the purpose of customer due diligence and all the implications that you mentioned in your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Okay. If I take you back to my slides, you will see the starting point will be what is a private company. If you look at 27, and what is a public company. A private company, from the perspective of share capital, is 100 million, 100,000 share capital, and then for a public company, 2 million share capital. Now, That is one. Another one is by turnover. And if you are familiar with this, the medium and small scale enterprises documentation, it defines what a small company, a small and medium scale company is. So these are some of the definitions that they use to distinguish small companies. But remember that within your organization also, you also have various classes of customers based on various characteristics. And that's why you have different type of departments in your organization. So for example, you have commercial bank, you have corporate bank, you have business banking, you have emerging markets and all that. And you use various levels of turnover. So it's not always good to use a one-size-fits-all to measure this kind of, but there are statutory requirements by different organizations, different acts like the SME, the medium and small scale industry, and they have their own definition. I don't know it offhand here now, but if you go, you check, they have their own definition. But for the purposes of due diligence, it's not always good to use a one-size-fits-all. You have your own peculiar risk in your organization. And again, for the purpose of CAMA also, there are also definitions for that. But don't stick to one because your own organization is different. So you might be in a company that is having large customer base, might be in a company that's having a small customer base, and that will determine how you structure your company, your various, the way you rate your customers and their sizes, and that determines how you do risk assessment for them. So it's not something that is a one-size-fits-all measurement.
All right. Thank you, sir. Just to mention, participant that asked that question is actually asking from the Gambia. And I think he can actually domesticate your responses to Gambia environment. Thank you for the response. All right. So I hope you will be on the standby for more questioning in the event that we have more for you. At this point in time, we'll be taking the presentation that we found that we've been putting in view since we started, and that is the presentation from Registrar General of CAC. Even before the presentation come up, there are questions already already waiting for him, and that is understandable. And so we are going to taking it from our hand. I think his presentation is on, and I can see it already, so I know other people can see it as well. So let me leave the floor for
Thank you very much.
Atolu to go ahead with his presentation. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, clearly.
Thank you very much. Apologies, profuse apologies, really, for all the hitches, all the problems encountered. Well, I guess, again, a benefit of hindsight now, it was good that I hadn't spoken first, because I see that my work has been made a lot easier by Mr. Wari's presentation, and even Mr. Bolega. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that name properly. Before I go into the presentation, let me commend the RG's apologies. As we speak, he's been addressing some other webinars. In the morning, he had a board meeting, and he's been addressing several webinars, and that is understandable. I mean, since the signing into law of this CAMA on the 7th of last month, every day we had at least, so it's been like that. He's really sorry that he couldn't do this himself. Having said that, I think I would like to address one or two of the issues that were raised, I mean, that will concern CAC, just to share our own perspective on those questions, from our end. Understanding that, of course, definitions will vary here because of the many industries that are involved. The first question I would like to, or issue I'd like to address is the concern by somebody who asks, why are churches and this? I think the first speaker did address that from his own perspective, and he did say that, well, other speakers would need to address it from their own perspective. Under CAMA, the law, churches and mosques are not treated as businesses. One, they are not for business. So they can be treated, and I know that even with the FIRS, for tax purposes, they are exempted from paying taxes. Now, there are spiritual activities, and I think this is where we've been having issues, and the agitations, the reactions against the CAMA. They are spiritual for churches and mosques, unlike other NGOs. For churches and mosques, there are peculiarities. They have a spiritual aspect, and they have the administrative. Now, the law does not, CAC does not regulate the spiritual activities of churches and mosques. We have no business doing that. Now, what CAC regulates is the incorporated and mosque. Now, it is these incorporated trustees that are constituted into corporate bodies, and they derive their powers, the enormous powers they have, from the law. Upon incorporation, the properties, all the assets and properties of the association, the church and the mosque, is vested in them for accountability. So what CAC wants to know, or they would like to know every time, is where do you get your money from? Who funds you? To what do you deploy this money? How do you protect the assets of the organization so that there are no abuses? The challenges who have been, I'm happy that the first speaker did make an illustration with the Catholic Church, and so they don't have issues with this kind of arrangements. But the problem we've always had in our own system is that for most of these churches, quite a number of them, particularly those that are recent, so to say, and if I say recent, maybe in the last 40 years or 30 years, they have not taken time, they don't have a good governance structure. And we found that they've always combined the spiritual and the administrative, the secular aspect in one person. And that is where the problem is. But for the purpose of the law, the trustees are accountable for everything that the law requires that incorporated trustees should abide by. And it is not a good argument, in my mind, to say that the state does not contribute anything to these churches or mosques, and so cannot be interested in how they manage their finances. The fact that the state gives you a holiday, an indulgence, no matter what you have as properties, not to pay tax, that is a gift from the state. That is an investment by the state in you, because you have committed to promote charitable and public benefit objectives. And that is why the state will be interested in whether you keep to that promise, that commitment or not. Now, the other thing, somebody said, classification here, would that not infringe on the right of persons, classification of associations, on the rights of persons to register companies? Now, incorporated trustees, classification of incorporated trustees here refers to determining the type of association you are, not eligibility for registration. You can have different kinds of associations. I mean, some may be churches, some may be spiritual, some may be cultural, some refer to here. It's not whether you have a right to register or not to register. And for small companies, there is a definition in the Act, going by the Act under the CAMA, Section 390. The requirements are straightforward. You must be, for that particular year, don't forget that this position, this status is not permanent. This year you may qualify as a small company. Next year you may not be a small company. Now the requirements, the conditions are: 1, you must be a private company. 2, your turnover must not be over 120 million, and your net asset must not be over 60 million, or such other amount as the commission may prescribe. 3, you must not have the business. 4, you must also not have government participation in the business. Then between the directors is 51% of the shares of the company. Now, if any of these conditions is missing, you do not qualify. as a small company. Now, having said that, like I said earlier, my work has been made very easy. Perhaps what we should be doing is addressing questions, that will come up, because practically everything I've wanted to discuss have been discussed by Mr. Buhari of the CBN, and I thank him very much for that. But all the same, since we prepared a slide, let's just go through. Can I get the next slide, please? Now, next slide, please. Thank you. Before now, we had CAMA 1990, and then I asked the question, what was wrong with that law that we now had to pursue another one? 2 decades and more after that time, there's been no significant amendment to the CAMA. And because of that, the CAMA 1990 became old and out of tune with modern realities, so that it became inadequate both in prescription and regulation to deliver the necessary climate for a modern and competitive economy in the global space. We could not, the law could not promote MSMEs who engage over 80% of total workforce, and it did not sufficiently promote stakeholder engagement and transparency necessary for health operations. Next slide, please. Now, a few highlights of CAMA 2020. Deliberately, there were many things that have been brought out by Mr. Buhari and by Mr. Bolega, who spoke after him. Now, most of those things, I just said, okay, let me talk about the things that people have not been talking about, really, just a few of them. We know about the single shareholder company. We know that the minimum share capital has also been revised. For private companies, it's now 100,000 naira, no longer 10,000 naira. And for public companies, 2 million naira, no longer 500,000 naira. Now, we also know that the law has now dispensed with the concept of authorized share capital. What you now have is minimum issued capital. What that means is that every share created must be issued. So there's no banking of shares, there's no speculation, there's no keeping of shares unallotted. As you need, on a need basis, you create shares and you issue them. There's also a requirement now for companies and persons who so qualify as with significant control in companies and limited liability partnerships. Now, limited liability partnership is a new entity, is a new vehicle introduced, and it's a corporate one. It's a corporate one. It's distinct from the partners. That is novel. Now, whoever qualifies as a person with significant interest is now obligated to inform the company or the limited liability partnership of that fact. And the company or LLP is obligated to also notify CAC of that information upon receipt. Now, there's also the disclosure of substantial shareholder in the public company. That had always been there. But what has now happened is that the threshold has been reduced to 5%, and then it's now mandatory. That wasn't there before, that the company must give CAC notice of these facts and maintain, both for persons with significant control and substantial shareholder, a register in the prescribed form, which must be updated from time to time, anytime there occurs any change in that information. Now, it has also introduced preemptive rights of shareholders in case of allotment of shares. What that means is that before a company can allot shares, you must first offer it to the members, the existing members, before you offer it to anybody outside the company. It also now prohibits the issue of shares at a discount. Of course, this is to prevent capital erosion. It has now admitted electronic transfer of shares. Next slide, please. Next slide. The law has now reduced the amount payable for registration of charges. Before now, the amount payable was 1% of the value of the charge. That has been reduced by 65%. And for public companies, in fact, it has been reduced by 165%, because what happened before now was that public companies paid twice whatever private companies paid. But now there is no discrimination. There is no dichotomy. Everybody pays 0.35%. or such other amount that is lesser that may be prescribed by the Commission. Now you also have, it has introduced e-notice of general meetings. So added to the traditional means of mode of sending notice of general meetings to members, now you can send by emails or such other electronic means to any member who has provided electronic address. It has also, like mentioned by both Mr. Buhari, Alaji, and Mr. Bolega, it has also restricted multiple directorship in public companies to not more than 5. Somebody asked, what is the transition period? What is the period allowed by law? For those who already are directors in more than 5 public companies, the time allowed by law is 2 years. So it's not something that will be enforceable immediately. For anybody, for all those who currently are directors in more than 5 companies, you have the next 2 years to reduce that number to not more than 5. The law now also mandates public companies to display their audited accounts on the company website. And it has also introduced business rescue mechanisms, the company voluntary arrangements, administration as an alternative to receivership and netting. The law has now designated related associations. Now, this is also important in this discourse, because what the law now allows the AC to do is to treat associations as related when certain conditions exist. For instance, if you have common trustees common to both of them, or if their objects are similar, if they have such nexus, then they can be treated as related associations for the purpose of regulation. Then the law also allows CAC now to appoint interim managers for incorporated trustees in certain circumstances. Now, there's been a lot of reactions to this by churches really, and that why would the CAC want to appoint interim managers and come and interfere in their businesses? Again, some even argue that this power is absolute, it's not subject to any review. But if you read that section, section 839, critically, you find that this section is not exercisable without going to court. And the court will not entertain the matter. You can't go ex parte. The persons involved, the other party, must be put on notice. No way CAC can exercise this power without going to court. It is only exercisable upon the sanction of the court. And there are instances, there are reasons why CAC would, in the first place, explore this option. The first of them is that where it believes or is reasonably suspects misconduct or mismanagement on the part of the trustees of the association, where there are issues of fraud, or where it thinks it is necessary to safeguard and protect the assets or properties of these associations. The law has also introduced a requirement for biannual statement of affairs to be filed by incorporated trustees. And it has also made it mandatory for incorporated trustees to file audited accounts when they are submitting their annual returns. Next slide, please. Now, CAMA 2020 and anti-money laundering, combating the financing of terrorism compliance. Now, the new law, in fact, so much has been said on this, and how the CAMA is replete with provisions that will enhance supervision in these areas. Now, the law contains provisions with respect to disclosure of beneficial ownership of shares in companies and interest in limited liability partnerships. At incorporation, you are required. This one had always been in the law, but now there will be more diligence on the part of the Commission to ensure that it is done. Now, the law requires at incorporation that if anybody is subscribing to the shares of a company for the benefits or as a nominee of some other person, that first person is required to disclose this fact and state the identity of that other person, who is the ultimate beneficial owner of the shares. After incorporation, persons with significant control whether in companies or limited liability partnerships, are also obligated to indicate the particulars of such control to the company within 7 days of becoming such a person. And the companies and the LLPs are in turn obligated to notify the Commission of such information or any change therein within 30 days of receiving the information from both the company and the Commission. Are obligated to maintain and update a register of persons with significant control. Beyond that, the limited liability partnerships are also obligated not just to give notice, but to also disclose the same information in every annual return that they file. Next slide, please. Now, who is a person with significant control? The law has taken time to define this, and the definition aligns with the UK definition, and it says that where a person holds directly or indirectly at least 5% of shares or interest in a company or limited liability partnership, or directly or indirectly holds at least 5% of the voting rights, right? Or directly or indirectly has the power to appoint or remove majority of the directors or partners, or otherwise can exercise or actually exercises significant influence or control over a company or limited liability partnership. And the last one, if he has the right to exercise or actually exercise significant influence or control over the activities of a trust or firm, whether or not it is a legal entity, but would itself satisfy any of the first 4 conditions if it were an individual, then that person is a person with significant control. And as such, he must disclose the necessary particulars to the company and the company to the CAC. Beneficial owner information. We know that such information and will enhance the integrity of the system by promoting corporate transparency in regards to ownership and control of companies and limited liability partnerships. We also know that it will help prevent asset shielding using the vehicle of companies and limited liability partnerships. We also know that it is useful in the fight against money laundering, terrorism financing, and other illicit or criminal activities, which are sometimes under the cover of companies and limited liability partnerships. Finally, we know that in the long run, it will promote investor confidence in the system and improve the rating of the economy in the global context. So what are we doing in the CAC? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Since the passage of the law, we have revised the current forms as well as designed new forms for obtaining information on BO and PSC. In fact, I was called out of a retreat by the Registrar General to come and make this presentation. That retreat has been going on for 2 weeks, and what we're trying to do is to review all our processes and forms in line with CAMA 2020. Because the moment the law is gazetted, it will come into force. It's already a law, but it is not yet operational because it has not been gazetted. And so we want to be ready. We are right now addressing our structure to accommodate these new entities and new provisions in the law. So we have now revised our forms, and we have also designed new forms to accommodate this information. We have also revised our operations checklist and processes to accommodate, again, the requirement of BO and PSC disclosures. We are also working in collaboration with the World Bank to ensure that a very comprehensive register of beneficial ownership is open to the respect of companies and liability partnerships and in compliance with the Act. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. I want to thank you for that wonderful presentation. I also owe you a personal appreciation as you made my job easy here. Some of the questions I was trying to collate from this end, you also answered them in the course of the presentation. So I want to thank you for that. However, I have a few questions here that I want to draw your attention to within the remaining time. I'll just run through the first one. This one is coming from Adeshino Olaoshun, and he said that such reports that financial institutions were doing at CSE in recent times has been very difficult to assess. And what is, want to know what is happening in CSE at present regarding that. That's number one. Then the second question says, can a foreigner, this is coming from Timothy Odion, said, can a foreigner be a member of the board of trustees? Can a foreigner, that is in Nigeria, can a foreigner be a member of the board of trustees? Okay, I think the third one is already answered. I don't know if you have addressed that already. Ochechi Peter was asking, if allowing CAC to determine the kind of association that will be registered, will that not be an infringement on right of association? I'm not too sure if that has been answered. Maybe you want to take those two first, then I'll come up with the rest. Thank you.
Right, sir. Okay, let me start with the last one. I think I addressed it in my presentation. That whether associations will not infringe on the rights to fundamentally guaranteed rights to association. Now, I said earlier, it's for the purpose of data. It is not to say whether or not an association can be registered. It is to say clearly that this association to be registered will fall under this class and type of association. Nothing more than that. Nothing more than that. So it will in no way infringe upon anybody's right to associate or come and register, approach the CAC for registration of incorporated trustees. Now, foreigner, yes, a foreigner can be a part of the board of, can be a trustee. A foreigner can be part of the board of trustees. Now, the delay in search reports, it's regrettable really that it's happening, and unfortunately, the tendency is to see our new approach to search reports as something that came as a result of COVID. No, it's something that we've been considering before now, and COVID only made it accelerated its implementation. Now, it's a new and over time to stabilize. We understand that yes, at the moment we're having challenges and we're having a backlog. Again, this is not unconnected with the strict requirement of the COVID regulations that only particular persons can be at work. It has been relaxed to grade levels 12 and above. But even at that, I mean, these people constitute less than 40% of the workforce. And we still have to address this number or even more applications. Because a lot of people are also rushing in applications for fear that the new CAMA may not just liberalize things, but may also add cost. I don't know where they're getting that fear from. So you find that as the volume of applications are increasing, the number of hands needed to address them is declining. But we are working around that, and I can assure you that in a very short while, we'll be out of that situation. Yes, I think I've addressed the 3 questions that were asked.
Yes, you've actually answered. Okay. I'm just trying to ask the next round of questions that have been posed. Okay, so the next question. So the next question, I think you also answered that. Someone here wants to know, for directors holding position in more than 5 companies, is this strictly for quoted companies, or it includes both private and public companies?
For public companies generally.
For public companies generally.
Public, okay.
Okay, thank you. Another one here, this is from Bashir Bello. I think most presentation has answered this question. Bashir Bello wants to know, in what way is this new policy a law? In this new law, is some of the difficulties being faced by small companies? How does it ease their difficulties?
Well,
yes.
okay. Well, yes. This law has reduced the entry barriers for small companies, and has also reduced, for those that are existing, regulatory hurdles for them. We know that it will reduce governance cost for them.
All right. Blessing Patrick wants to know if the current CAC form can still be used, say for instance, the change of director until the new law is gazetted. Can we continue to use this current form until the new law is gazetted? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Tolu, can you hear me, sir? Okay, for those of us that are still, okay, I think he's back now.
Sorry, yes. Yeah.
Yes, you are back now.
Okay.
So,
and I think I've seen the question on the small companies and how this law is the operations for them.
Yes, I'm asking another question actually, and the question, someone wants to know if the current form at CAC, the current CAC form, can still be used before the new law is gazetted.
Yes, please. Until the new law comes into operations, we still run the old system.
Okay. I have another question from Wede. Wede wants to know if SCUMU registration can be done at registration with CAC. Is that possible?
We don't do SCUMU registration. Yeah, okay. I don't understand what is meant by that, but we only register companies.
All right, no problem. We have SCUMU representative as part of our panelists, and he will be coming up shortly. Then someone also, Ideme Udo, wants to know where one can get explanation on any part of the CAMA in future. I think that person can actually approach CAC. Let me deliver you of that. So where there is also saying this will be a compliant process if the start of the school, okay, it's just following up on his response. So I think with this, we have exhausted some of the questions intended for the representative of the Registrar General of CAC in person of Mr. Tolulope Shonaike. We want to thank you very much for making this presentation and also attending to some of our questions. Thank you very much. And I do hope you will still be on the standby till the end of the call.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you. So at this point in time, we are going straight to the next presentation. That is to be handled by the Director of Special Control Unit against money laundering. And the Director of SCUMU is ably represented by Mr. Temitope Erinomo. I hope that is properly pronounced. And so I'm going to yield the floor to him right now, and as he makes his presentation. So, Mr. Temitope, over to you, sir, and thank you.
It's all right. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
It's okay. And I've also shared my screen. Yes, I've also shared my screen. Can we also see that as well?
Yes, from my end, I can see your screen and hope others do so.
It's okay. I think I will just have to start off from there. Good afternoon, distinguished participants and presenters. First of all, let me thank the organizers of the program for putting up something like this at this very, very crucial time, especially for us that also deals with the non-profit organization, which has been the most where the eat now on the CAMA is coming from now, and also to also explain that my boss could not make it to the meeting because of some of that issues. First of all, let me acknowledge the fact that most of the issues, most of the highlights of the discussions have actually been made by the previous presenters, especially the person from CAC, Mr. Pattinson, Mr. Buhari from the CBN. However, I'll just make my presentation very short, and I'll just go straight to some of the issues that we need to understand. Well, first of all, we need to understand something. When it comes to the issues of non-profit organizations in Nigeria. Now, over the years, for the NGOs coalitions we are working with here, we've had instances where they tell us, oh, we are open to some form of regulation. However, we want something that is agreeable to everyone and other. And I want to acknowledge the fact that in spite of the controversies, around the new CAMA, some of these issues have actually been addressed, whether at the operators level, whether at the regulators level. Now, I will go straight to look at some of the impacts that the regulations might have, the new act might have on what we do here in SCUMU and what we expect the designated non-financial institutions, especially the non-profit organizations, are meant to do in terms of their compliance with the Money Laundering Prohibition Act in Nigeria and other related regulations. Now, if you actually look at some of the provisions of the CAMA, now for example, we posit that it actually has certain impacts in terms of enhancing the AML CFT compliance. Now, it may not be direct. However, you will also see that it's also building some kind of, it will also build up some kind of cooperation and collaboration, not even between the agencies supervising or having something to do with the MPOs, but even between the MPOs and the regulatory authorities themselves. And we also understand the fact that the additional compliance requirements he actually placed on MPOs, I don't see it as burdensome. I actually see it as something that had value, to what the MPOs are doing. For now, I understand that the discussion is heated, but I'm sure by the time we have proper engagement, feasible, for AML CFT supervision of the MPOs in Nigeria, I'm sure some of these issues will actually be clear. Now, if you look at what are the impacts on AML CFT compliance, we need to understand that in totality, the provisions of the new CAMA, now we actually improved Nigerian AML CFT compliance rating with international standard. No doubt, we've seen issues of beneficial ownership being addressed. We've seen issues, of nominee directors being addressed. We've seen issues of governance even within the MPO sector, being addressed. We've seen issues of record keeping, even though we have that in existence. However, it will also strengthen an existing governance structure in that respect. And I'm also very happy, when it comes to the issue of the classification. Yes, so many concerns have been raised about the classification of MPOs, but it is actually what we need. If we have had this kind of classification and we have data, registration of MPOs, done like this in the CAC, I tell you, we wouldn't be where we are today when it comes to the risk assessment of the MPO sector. We will have been more equipped, with better information on what number actually constitutes different categories of MPOs that we have in Nigeria, and that we actually enhance our targeted supervision in this area. And I'm also very happy, on the impact the Act is going to have on sanction screening and fit and proper test, within that CAC will now be able to conduct. In previous times, we've had engagements with CAC, and what they tell us is, oh no, we just do a little of some of these things, and we don't really have rights to reject somebody's application and a lot of that. But I'm sure now, with the new regulations, with the new CAMA Act, with the powers, that are given to CAC, a lot we have to go into sanction screening, a lot we have to go into comprehensive fit and proper test, for persons to actually prevent terrorists and other criminals from abusing the sector. Now, we've also seen in the Act, very key provisions that we actually prevent the diversion and misuse of trust properties and trust arrangement. Now, trustees know now that they have, with the MPOs they are overseeing, the thing has changed from, just trustees for trusteeship's sake, just for the name's sake. Now they know they have NGOs now. So and we see that going into mitigating diversion and misuse of the trust property and the trust arrangement. And we almost seen, notably, that this will also enhance the record keeping and preservation within the MPO sector. I'm particularly very happy about the biannual statement of affairs, not just the annual reports now. Because if you look at the requirements of the that you monitor this non-profit organization, ensure that they have proper financial records. They also have proper program records. So I think with the statement of affairs now, and possibly some other regulations that will be coming on the CAMA 2020 to actually clarify some of these issues, there will be more comprehensive requirements on this issue of record keeping, this issue of providing reports on the programs they are actually working on, not just filing some financial record and sending those to the CAC. Now, if you look at the what we call the operation, now as it is now, CAC it's gradually becoming a very key place for agencies in Nigeria, even for NGOs in Nigeria, to access certain kind of information. Now we now understand the fact that CAC will now have databases of MPOs in different classifications. We now understand that CAC now we have proper records even of NGOs that are functional, because we now the requirements of one of the requirements of CAMA is that if located, your organization could be dissolved. So we're going to be having a lot of information that agencies can actually work on, to improve AML CFT supervision, and I see a lot go into that in coming times. Now let's look at the additional compliance requirements, the additional reporting in terms of the biannual statement of affairs and what that will really do to the MPOs we need to understand the fact that one of the risks that we face in Nigeria, especially from the MPO sector, are coming from the sham MPOs. What I mean by sham MPOs, MPOs that are just posing as, they're just posing as legitimate MPOs without programs. They are actually not doing anything. So some of these additional requirements in terms of biannual statement of affairs, in terms of dormant reporting of dormant accounts, we actually provide enough information. In fact, early warning signs to AML CFT supervisors to look at the provisions of the new CAMA. A lot has now gone into governance issues. Governance in terms of looking at the internal controls, governance looking at the structural, looking at the management of the entire MPOs itself. We are going to benefit a lot, and the MPOs are going to benefit a lot, in strengthening, in this strengthened internal control system, in ensuring that the trust properties, are kept. They are not diverted to some other things. And in terms of that, we are going to be seeing stronger internal control system. We are going to be seeing stronger internal order system, that will support the AML CFT compliance we are requesting from these people. And I also want to mention the fact that the new CAMA, in my perspective, given the provisions that we have there, we enhance the donors' confidence in this sector. We actually enhance donors' confidence in this sector. Now, I'm sure a lot of non-for-profit operators are listening to what I'm saying now, and I understand the fact that a lot of them are actually already complying with certain donors' requirements in terms of reporting, in terms of accountability, in terms of raising an application of their funds. Now, if you look at what the new CAMA we actually go to do in terms of letting them requiring people, MPOs, to declare the source of their fund, declare the activities they are working on, declare how these monies are applied, declare how they are structured. It will actually complement, the existing donors requirements that they have, and they have been operating. Now, you will also understand, we need to understand the fact that yes, the churches, the faith-based organization have raised several issues about the operation of the act, and I know we cannot take these things out because they're just relics of our past history in terms of we versus them, in stature that the civil society and government, have taken over years. But I know that this position can change. And I also want to explain the fact that, acknowledge the fact that, yes, the new CAMA is actually a very fantastic piece of legislation, especially for sanitizing and even protecting and promoting what the non-profit organizations are doing. I know there are still areas that need to be resolved. For example, how will have seen better engagements of the CSOs themselves in terms of self-regulation, in terms of granting some kind of space for them to within the framework of CAMA 2020. I know that possibly some of the adjustment to the CAC regulation and some other things, we also address this thing, and also future engagement with stakeholders. We also address some of these areas. Thank you very much. Let me end my presentation here. Can you share this with us?
Thank you so much, Mr. Temitope. We want to appreciate that your wonderful presentation, and I want to say it's actually within the record time. Just for the mention of it, I have a couple of questions for you, and that was why it took a while for you to hear my voice immediately after you finished presenting.
It's fine.
I was actually busy at the background. Okay, very quickly, I'd like to start with the question from. I'd like to start with the question from Udemeudo. He said, I tried to open a corporate account for my NGO, but the bank required SCUMUL, whereas SCUMUL registration also require bank accounts. Please, how can I resolve this? That's the first question. Number two, Blessing Patrice is also asking, said, where a SCUMUL registration was denied for reason of not uploading proficiency certificates. Does this mean that the already operational corporate account will be blocked? How long does one have to re-register before it affects the account status? That's the second question. Number three, Abbas Yusuf also want to know if SCUMUL will want to borrow an idea from CAC in terms of registration, okay, where it can reduce the turnaround time to less than 24 hours and make it a standalone registration. Then final question for you, that should be the fourth question on this segment, and this is coming from Dr. Funmi Akinyele. Okay, the question is that if MPOs are required to, submit their information online, if it is possible for MPOs to submit their information online, and this is coming from their experiences at the regional level, submission at regional offices have become a serious issue for them. And that's why they are asking if online submission is possible. But another worry around that is if SCUMUL as an organization has a data protection measure to protect such platform, so that their information is not susceptible to or vulnerable to hackers and fraudsters. I think those are the four questions for you. You may wish to take them now. Thank you, sir.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dewi. Let me just possibly start from the latter ones. Now, coming to the question of if information whether the MPOs can file their registration online, that has actually been our practice. We don't accept hard copies registration, and you can go on our website at scumul.org and file in your application. And I also want to address the issue of shortening the turnaround time for the registration. Now, we actually have a minimum, a maximum of 5 working days to resolve the registration issue. However, what you find in most cases is most people don't put up the proper application. Most people don't choose the proper classification. Most people often, find it very difficult to stay within the limits of the size of the document that we can accept, and that drags the application, for a while. And oftentimes, you will find a place whereby to an applicant, but unfortunately, is using the email address of the cyber cafe or wherever where he submitted this application to, and it doesn't get notification. And we also let you know that we are deploying new ICT application, which will be operational very soon, to address some of this thing and possibly also cut down the turnaround time for the registration. And let me go to the person who asked, where school registration are denied, how long will it take for registration? Now, it just takes the same time that it takes for us to process your application if you apply newly. Now, if your application is denied, now we actually send you a notification telling you the grounds for rejecting your application. Now, what we do is we delete that application from the backend so that it allows you to reapply. And once you reapply, your application get processed immediately, and you are notified of when you can come to get your certificate. Now, I think Udeme Hudo asked about school registration requiring some bank details, whereas they've not even opened anyone at all. Now, we've said several times, even to the bankers, we've said several times to the applicants, let one of the trustees use his own account and BVN, to fill the registration form and submit. That don't have to, stop you from coming to apply for school registration. I think I've taken all the questions, unless there are any other ones you want to ask me.
Yes, I have just two of them, additional one, just as you were answering those. Let me quickly bring them up. And someone wants to know, that's Sonia Arrow, would like to know if school registration is one-off or renewable annually. And that will be the last question on this segment. Thank you.
It's okay. Let me quickly, I think I forgot to address the issue of the data protection policy for the registration information that we receive. Now, I want to assure you that our databases are actually secured, and they are actually warehoused, in collaboration with the EFCC, with the high city in the EFCC, and we have sufficient procedures and policies in place. The people who don't need to see these things, even within the office here, don't see them. Restrictions are limited to what you have to do with these information. Then going to Mr. Harrow's question. School registration for now is one-off. You don't repeat school registration every year. For now, is one-off and it's free of any charges. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. We want to appreciate your kind gestures in giving the presentation and also answering some of those questions. So perhaps as we go on, if there are more, then we will let you know. We will also implore you to still stand by just through to the end of the program. For now, before we take the last presentation, I want to seize this opportunity as we have some time on our schedule to also bring up some questions that I feel have been directed to the early speakers. So I have a few questions here for the representative of the Registrar General, and I hope Mr. Tolu is still there.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, thank you very much. Them have Jamila Yusuf, who wants to know who wants to expatiate more on how we can determine the person that have a privilege share holding, or whether an indirect control of an how will one be able to determine that, especially where that person is not the legal document of the person? And the second one is
Sorry,
you want to do that?
I didn't quite get that. You were breaking. It says, how do you determine?
How do you determine that in a company when it's not a legal document?
I can't hear you. You're not audible. I don't know if I'm the only one getting that, but I didn't quite hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
It's better. All right. Okay. Someone actually wants to know, how do you determine a principal shareholder or someone who has control of a company when that person is not listed on the legal documents? How can someone determine that? And that's the first question. The second one is that for companies that already have secretary, and now that it is no longer mandatory, what is the stand now? Perhaps this person wants to know if secretaries should be fired. And that's the question coming from Bala Nuru. Okay. Now, Abba Yusuf also wants to know if the commission will give an online access for the purpose of conducting search on the CAC database, and Bade Joko Kabiru want to know that as a single director in a limited liability company, how could effectively corporate governance be assessed? Those are the other questions that people have put up directly to you, sir. Thank you. And Mr.
Thank you
Tolu,
very
are
much,
you
sir.
there?
I'm here.
Okay, I think I should just add this last one. Dr. Funmi Akinyele, who asked the question, that question from Skumul, is also directing the same questions to you and also want to know if registration is possible online, and what level of data protection is available in Corporate Affairs Commission to give assurance to those who make use of your service regarding the safety of their information. So you have the floor now. You can respond to all of them. Thank you.
Okay, let me start with the last one so I don't forget it. I'm here to write that down. Yes, I mean, registration with the CAC is online. It's been online now for upward of about 3 years, and the data submitted to us has been secured. I mean, they are secured, and we've not had any violation or any intrusion or any abuse of such information in any way. For online access for search reports, if that is what we're talking about, we're not there yet, but that is the end view. we've not deployed the necessary application for that yet. And we're still trying to digitize our legacy records that were inherited from way back. So we're not there yet, but that's where we're going. Now, what should a one-man, what should the secretary do? I also expect that this company will probably fall under the small definition. Now, I would not, if you have a secretary, you should keep your secretary. You cannot even do without a secretary except you qualify as a small company, meeting that means satisfy all those conditions that were prescribed. But again, if the burden of retaining a secretary is not too much, I would advise, the law gives you the option, but for any serious company, I mean, you want to take advantage of every kind of professional advice you can get to run your small forever. You are small now, but your plan is to get big and operate in the more formal economy. So, and this will be a serious concern if you do not have the benefit of sound professional advice, right? So it's good that you keep your secretary, however you still want to arrange that. But if you think you must, you want to do away with your secretary, that's okay. I mean, if you fall within the category of companies that do not have to have a company secretary, that's okay. Then there is the question about how can corporate governance be assessed in the case of a single shareholder company. Beyond the few exemptions that the single shareholder company enjoys, is still subject to the kind of regulation that other companies are subject to. It still has to keep records. But I mean, it will be absurd for you to expect that a single shareholder company should be holding meetings. Who is he going to hold the meetings with? I mean, is he going to hold a meeting with himself? But whatever thing that a single share, that a decision that he would have taken in case it was, or required to be taken in case he was not a single shareholder company, he should report it to his directors, the board of directors. Because a single shareholder company, of course, can also have one director. So I do not really see so much problem about corporate governance with a single shareholder company.
All right. Thank you for that.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if I can just add to what our CSC director has said, just to add a little bit to some of those answers.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
In two areas.
And after your contribution, sir, I will just add the one question that has been waiting for you. I'll just add it to it. Well, go ahead, sir.
Okay. First of all, on the issue of secretary, I don't know. I think the Act didn't make it mandatory for the small companies. So if you have an existing secretary, what the Act is saying is that you have a choice. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can keep the secretary because for me, like I said, they play a very vital role in helping guide for proper governance, So if you're a small company and you fit into the definition as required by the Act, but you still want to keep the secretary, it's well and good. I mean, it only further strengthens your resolve to want to have proper governance. And I tell you that proper governance is a very great asset to any organization. Anytime you go anywhere, one of the first things they check about you is your governance system. So that would be a plus for you. So I don't think we should go about firing secretaries just for the sake, because the Act didn't tell you to go and fire secretaries. It just tells you that you should strengthen, you should find it easy to establish a company because you're small, and then you can decide if you want to have a secretary or not. So it's optional for you. And then the first question on you asked a question about how do you then identify an ultimate beneficial owner or a beneficial owner when the person is not even listed in any document? And that's a fantastic question. You see, that is why it's good to have a proper risk management process in place in the organization. Even the FATF recommendation started with recommendation 1, risk assessment. So the first thing you do with every customer is you risk assess the customer to know what is this customer going to do. If you remember the definition of due diligence by FATF under recommendation 10, you need to know the purpose of that organization, what they said they'll be doing, how will they be, what is the nature of control that whoever says is in charge of the organization has. It will be very easy for you to know that somebody who purports to own a company and running the company does not show on a day-to-day basis in his transactional pattern that he is in charge of the company. So, for example, somebody who is registered, whose name is all over the document, and every time you are discussing with him as a bank relationship officer, he's always telling you, I will talk to Oga, or I will ask my boss to, I will ask somebody. Every time you are in interaction with him, he's referring to a third party. Of course, you know that there must be somebody who is actually in control, which may not be in any document. So the bottom line of it all is that the only way you get to know about such kind of ultimate beneficial owner that is not mentioned is through your transaction monitoring. And in the definition by FATF under recommendation 10, it said continuous monitoring, continuous due diligence. Put your ears to the ground. You will hear and you will see red flags that can give you indicators that this person is really not the person in control of the business. So it's not everything you will get from them. Sometimes even the information you will get might even come from social media. Follow the person on his LinkedIn. Follow the person on his Facebook. Listen to the gossip press. There are so many these days. You will gather information there, discrete information that will sell out that this person really is not the person running this company. I just wanted to just chip in those two. But I have a question for you, Mr. Sheneke Tolope. My question stems from the question that was asked you earlier on data quality and the data protection. Don't you think, sir, that at this point in time, it's just to give more confidence to the public that you should have a data protection certification from the Nigerian Data Protection Act as required, and also even the GDPR requirements, just to give, and then also just put more burden on yourself on getting ISO 27001 certifications, business continuity certifications, because this will give more comfort and confidence to the general public, because there's a general palpable fear around people's information just lying all over the place. Because currently today, as banks, we have customers who are actually complaining that we give a lot of information to government agencies, and some of these government agencies, unscrupulous persons within, collect this information and come to directly interface with our customers, showing them the information we have given to the public institutions. I think that's a very serious thing, and unless we have this kind of comfort that the public institutions are also applying those international best practice standards for data protection, these fears will continue to be there. I think this is just a pose I also want to put on the table for you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patterson. In your guys, I'll take this forward to the person with significant control in this matter. Helen?
Okay. I think in one way that has been answered, it will be taken to the Registrar General, I suppose you've been.
He's my friend.
All right.
He's my friend, so no problem.
Okay. Just two questions, and I hope if we can deal with it in just 2 minutes before we bring up the last presentation. One, I have 3 people asking that same question at S Commission, where one has an issue in terms of registration and all of that, and you want to follow up. What is the proper channel for following up? You are going to take that for us, maybe in one word. And for SCUMU, there is also a question for you here. Someone wants to know that in recent times, we've been hearing about SCUMU agents who are promising that they can get you SCUMU registration done within the record time of 1 week. Are they real, and is this something that should be taken seriously? And for Mr. Patterson, someone asked question earlier on, and in view of your presentation, what are those things that one needs to look at when one is carrying out customer due diligence on not-for-profit organizations, NPO? So I like Mr. Tolulokwe to speak first, then next Mr. Temitope Erinomo, then Mr. Patterson will take his own, make his own response, and I will also, by then, we will be taking the last presentation for the day. Mr. Tolulokwe, sir.
Okay, thank you very okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. For issues with any application submitted, now we don't allow customers within the system. All applications are sent to us by electronic means, but there are dedicated email addresses for every kind of service. So if you have issues with your applications, I advise that you send a complaint or a mail to us using this address, complaints@cac.gov.ng. Complaints as pronounced COMPLAINTS @cac.gov.ng.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Temitope, over to you, sir.
It's okay. I just want to say that SCUMU don't have agents who register for people. However, we have what we call professional intermediaries, like lawyers who comes to register on behalf of their clients, you know, which we ordinarily don't encourage because the clients still have to sit for sensitization before they get their certificate. And in case you see anyone who is presenting himself as a SCUMU legend, please let us know. We'll like to take that very seriously.
All right, thank you. Mr. Patterson now, sir.
Okay. Okay, the question here is due diligence measures in the NPO.
Yes.
The major due diligence requirements for NGOs largely around the use of the likely abuse of the NGOs, what they call NPOs or NGOs, by either money launderers or terrorist financing groups. Therefore, what you typically have to make sure you put in place is that you have a strong due diligence over third parties that you deal with. You must understand and know all the relevant third parties involved in every transactions you do, particularly donations that you receive. Your major source of activity in NPOs is donations and grants. So when you have situation where you don't know the profiles of the people who are donating money to you, and where you have specific organizations who come to you with donations, with attachments to those donations, you need to carry out extensive due diligence to know the source of the monies of the donation, where they're making their money from. That is the primary due diligence that NPOs need to put in place. Secondly, also, you also need to do a lot of due diligence on the persons that you also provide humanitarian services to. So some of the typologies we have seen recently, such that we find that NPOs, particularly in the Northeast, are used to provide donations and grants to IDPs. But many times you find out that these monies end up in the wrong hands. So what you need to do is to be sure that you know the beneficiaries of donations, and be able to know that these beneficiaries are actually the ones that are actually getting benefit of whatever donations that you are putting out there. It's very important that you do that. And unless you do that, you may not be able to, know the final destination of the funds. Remember, for the case of money laundering, you have to be able to track on a continuous basis how the monies flow. If the money goes and comes back, it's money laundering. Then for terrorists, NPOs can also be used by terrorists to perpetrate terrorist activities. And so if you are a legitimate NPO and a third party wants to use you to perpetrate terrorism, it's quite easy if you have not done proper due diligence on the third party that is giving you the funds. So I think those are the major things that the NGOs should typically look out for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I've posed questions on behalf of other people to the panelists, but there is one question that has been coming from every quarter, and I think I should be the one to answer that. And that is the question surrounding whether the material relating to these presentations will be made available. I am saying that this is one of Data Pro contribution to knowledge in Nigeria. And shortly after this presentation, every one of us that registered for this program, we get copies of every presentation. So for everyone that have requested for the presentations regarding the discussion of today, I can assure you, you are going to get it after the program. So I hope that settles a lot of questions that I've been getting here. Okay, so without much ado, it is time to take the presentation from the chairman of the Association of the Chief Compliance Officers of Banks in Nigeria, ably represented by the Vice Chairman, Mr. Ibrahim Bello. Thank you for your patience. Like they say, the last but not the least, is definitely not the least of the presentation, and it's also as equally ranked as all other presentations that we have had. So you can go ahead, Mr. Ibrahim Bello, to make your presentation. You have the floor now, and you can go ahead and share your slides.
Okay, thank you very much. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ibrahim Bello. I'm actually the General Secretary of the Association of Chief Compliance Officers of Banks in Nigeria. So I'm taking this presentation on behalf of our chairman, who is unavoidably absent. Being the last speaker, I think I have the pleasure of enjoying the benefit of the fact that the earlier speakers have covered a significant part of what I'm expected to cover. So I won't be spending much time reinventing the wheel, as it were. What I'm speaking to is ultimate beneficial ownership, which a number of the speakers have spoken to, and the expectations from CAMA for reporting entities. And the general outline for me for the presentation is the background. We look at the background, we look at the national framework for beneficial ownership, we look at domestic evolution, we look at CAMA reforms and obligations for financial institutions and designated non-financial institutions, and then benefits of unveiling beneficial owners, and then conclusions. So as a background, we've heard from Dr. Bono and Mr. Buhari and a number of other speakers around the fact that FATF has a number of recommendations around unveiling ultimate beneficial ownership. The significant ones that speak to this directly is recommendation 24 and 25. Recommendation 24 speaks to transparency and beneficial ownership of legal persons, while recommendation 25 speaks to transparency and beneficial ownership of legal arrangements. So these are the two major recommendations. And of course, you then have the immediate objective 10, as it were. Sorry, immediate objective 5. So I understand, I believe that everybody knows who that issues recommendations around money laundering, combating, and terrorist financing prevention as well. So what is the nexus between recommendation 24 and indeed 25 and the immediate outcome 5? Essentially, they are speaking to about the same thing, because recommendation 24 and 25 is speaking to the fact that competent authorities need to have timely access to adequate, accurate, and up-to-date beneficial ownership information. Okay, and the initial immediate objective 5 then goes further to say that there must be prevention of legal persons and arrangements from being used for criminal purposes, which is essentially what the recommendations are also speaking to. And that legal person and arrangement must be sufficiently transparent for financial institutions to understand clearly who the ultimate beneficial owners are. Okay. So on national framework in Nigeria, we have 3 basic approaches. We have the registry approach, we have the company approach, and then we have the existing information approach. In terms of the registry approach, this is speaking to the registrar of companies who must obtain and hold up-to-date information on beneficial ownership. Now, we've heard from the representative of CAC that they collect this information at the point when companies present themselves for registration, and that it is expected, based on the FATF recommendation, that all companies created within a country must be duly registered, and the records must be maintained at the company registry. And basic information around the records that are supposed to be obtained are things like the address, the company name, the beneficial owners, the proof of incorporation, which will be issued at the time after they register. Okay, and then under the company approach, what FATF is saying is that the company itself must hold up-to-date information as to its own beneficial owner. So as they change, they must update their record and ensure that they have that record available at every time that it is being requested. Okay. And they also have the obligation to ensure that if the beneficial ownership changes, either by way of additional entrant or that somebody sells their own stake in the company, they must also approach the registrar of companies and notify them, say that, look, this has changed, you need to update your record as well. And then the third one that is speaking to existing information, part of the FATF recommendation is that we need to use the existing information collected on beneficial ownership of corporates to identify the beneficial owners. So although a financial institution, a company walks up to say that I want to start a relationship with your financial institution, and they give you their incorporation documents, you need to verify using all sorts of they are dealing with who they say that they are. Okay, so you can go as far as saying that I need your audited reports, because there's a requirement that those names are to be published in there. Okay, you need to look at other things like property registry, tax authorities, stock exchange, as on a risk-based approach. It's not everybody that comes to you that you say you want to collect all this data from just to prove their ownership. But when you risk rank your customers, you will know automatically which are the ones that I need to go a step further to ensure that I get the information to unveil their beneficial ownership. Okay, there's also a body called Open Government Partnership. This is a body of international stakeholders, financial institution, designated non-financial institution, NGOs, and a host of other types of entities that came together to focus on improving transparency, okay, accountability, and citizens' participation and responsiveness through technology and innovation. Nigeria signed up to this body in December 2016, and we also made plans to host our own public register of beneficial owners, which I believe is still ongoing. Then domestically, we can look at ultimate beneficial owners in three perspectives. From what the AML CFT regulation is saying, that is speaking to the fact that all financial institutions are required to identify and verify beneficial ownership. So it is mandatory for all financial institutions and designated non-financial institutions in Nigeria. And then in Nigeria, we also have what we call the NETI roadmap. NETI is the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, which is speaking to the extractive industry to ensure that owners of oil and gas and mining companies are unveiled as well. And I've spoken about the open government partnership in the previous slide. Now, there are specific sections of CAMA 2020 that is speaking to beneficial ownership, Section 119, Section 120, and Section 320. Under Section 119, which we've heard from the representatives of the CAC, that if you are a person that has significant control in any company, within 7 days of having that control, you must immediately notify that company that you have this significant interest. And the company, in turn, once they get that information, they would ensure that they get the basic information that they have about you. And within a month of receiving that information, they are supposed to also update their records and notify the registry as well. And the registry, in turn, of course, we know that the registry maintains all this information, and they can ask whatever question that they need to ask to satisfy themselves that they have the correct information as well. Now, Section 120 is speaking to disclosure of substantial shareholders in public companies. Now, this is a notch higher than what we have in the previous slide, wherein anyone who has substantial shareholding in a public company, right, shall give notice in writing to the company stating their name, address, and full particulars of the shares and types of shares that they are holding, either in their own name or in the name of a nominee, okay, which they have appointed to hold those shares on their behalf. Now, the substantial shareholder, for the purpose of this particular requirement, is seen to be anybody that has 5% shares of a company, of a public company. So if you have 4% shares, yeah, you're just about getting there. But as soon as you have 5% shares, you need to notify the company immediately. Section 320 is speaking to register of directors, residential addresses. And this is to say that the company must keep the register of all the addresses of their directors, right? And that this must always be up to date at any given point in time. So, for example, you're an FI, a company wants to open an account with you and you're asking for address of their director, they can't say that they don't know, because ab initio, the initial two sections are spoken to the fact that that information must be made available from the director to the company, from the company to the registry as well. And for all of this, where there is a default, right, there are penalties that the commission will determine in its for each of these breaches. Now, obligations of financial institutions, and designated non-financial institutions. Generally, the obligation for us as financial institutions or members of financial institutions or designated non-financial institutions is to understand the ownership and control structure of a customer, right? And this goes beyond just receiving documents. A lot of financial institutions today, when they get incorporation documents like MEMAT, they collect and they tick box that, yes, we have collected this information and then it is filed off. But you see, if you don't read some of these documents, you will not really understand what is in there. If the company that is presenting themselves for a relationship with you are actually doing what their MEMAT says, or they're doing something outside what they're allowed to do by way of registration. So you need to understand that ownership and control structure by asking them details and reviewing the documents that they have given you to ensure that it makes sense and you understand them. And then to determine the natural persons that ultimately owns or control a customer. Now, the rule for the 5% ownership is that ownership for UBOs is that if you are doing relationship, if you're trying to establish a relationship with A, B, and C Limited, right? And A, B, and C says that Ibrahim Bello is one of their shareholders who owns maybe 5%, and there is XYZ Limited and CDE Limited who owns maybe 30% each. It means that you have to go further to look into those other entities that are shareholders of this entity that you're about to have a relationship with, to unveil at 5% level until you get to the natural persons who are the ultimate owners. You'll find out that oftentimes money launderers typically mask their identity using complex legal structures, either using trusteeship or having a private company. You know, so when they are trying to gain access to a regulated industry, they don't present themselves as they are because they will be easily identified and people will not want to do business with them. So they will create multiple structures that is intended to hide their identity. Now, if you don't drill down to 5% level, right, you may not understand who the natural person is. Hence, the requirement is that you need to ensure that you get who owns the natural person that owns 5% of the stakes in that company. Additional obligations. Now, for companies here, they're saying that the natural persons are those who own controlling interests and those who comprise the mind and management of the company. Okay? Those who own controlling interests and those who are the mind and management of the company. And then for trust, okay, you'll find out that what is expected is that you must understand who the settlor is, who the trustees, and the person exercising effective control over the trust and beneficiaries. So for financial institutions and designated non-financial institutions, there are three key things that are important to us. Obtain the information that you need to use to unveil who the beneficial owners are. And like Mr. Patterson said, he said, you have to continue to do ongoing due diligence. So due diligence is not a destination, it's something that you will continue to do in the life of that relationship that you have with that entity. And then you need to ensure that all the documents, data, and information that you collected are kept up to date to ensure that on an ongoing basis, if they ask you, this entity, do you know them? You say, yes, I know them because their records are up to date with me, and I know when some of their ownership is changing. Now, for financial institutions from an AML CFT perspective, the Money Laundering Prohibition Act expects that all financial institutions and designated non-financial institutions should have an AML CFT program that speaks to these 5 things. The first one is how you determine who the customer's beneficial owners are, some of which I've described. The other one is the information you collect about each beneficial owner, which will be done on a risk basis, okay? And then you have the information that you need to verify. There are information that are expected to verify in line with the Money Laundering Prohibition Act, and you must document the evidence that you have done that verification. A typical example is when you collect a customer's international passports. You are expected to go on the to the Nigerian Immigration Service and check that that passport is actually valid and it was issued. Okay. The other one is the how reliable and independent the documentation that you have are. You must make sure that they are reliable. And when you are conducting verification, verification is largely independent of what you have received in terms of documents and information from the entity. And then the last one is speaking to how you update beneficial ownership information for your customer and manage changing risk over the duration of the relationship with the customer. So in assessing beneficial ownership, beneficial owner, money laundering, and terrorism financing risk, there are so many things that you do a risk assessment. Now, in that risk assessment, you're looking at what type of entity is this entity. Is it a low-risk entity in terms of, say, a public company? Is it a high-risk entity in terms of a company that is in the extractive industry, or somebody that is politically exposed, or an entity that is in a high-risk jurisdiction? So you need to look at that, and these will determine how you will conduct your enhanced due diligence to ensure that you get the right information and you are able to understand and know who the natural persons that control that entities are. Okay, benefits of unveilment. The first one is that, look, whether you like it or not, you want to know who you are dealing with, right? Even from a personal perspective, if somebody walks up to you and say, my name is this, you want to be sure that they are who they are, and they don't pose a fraud risk or money laundering risk to your business. Okay. You also want to understand who are the people that are controlling that entity. So you want to know who the MD is, who the chief financial officer is, who the company secretary is, and those important leadership people that control the entity. Okay. You also want to identify these beneficial owners to determine what additional due diligence you need to do. So if you don't go a step further to say that, look, let me understand based on my risk assessment, what type of entity am I dealing with? You will not know to what extent you need to do enhanced due diligence. Okay. And then you also want to know that you are not doing businesses with entities or individuals that have been proscribed, either as terrorists or as money launderers, or people that are jailbirds, amongst other things, because it can lead to reputational damage for your own entity. Okay, and then finally, also trying to ensure that you prevent your entity from regulatory sanctions, from not doing the minimum that the regulations have said that you should do. And then, in conclusion, I will speak to a question that was asked around unveiling beneficial ownership. Now, when you're unveiling beneficial ownership, like I said earlier, it's not a destination, it's a lifelong journey to the extent that that relationship exists within your entity. Now, the initial opportunity that you will get to unveil a beneficial owner is when the company presents himself or themselves to your institution to commence a relationship. You say, give me your MEMAT, give me your certificate of incorporation, okay? Who are your directors? Who are your shareholders? That's the first step. But there are so many other opportunities that you would have to ensuring that that initial documents that you got, apart from verification, that it's actually true. So for example, there will be entities that a money launderer wants to use, right? He sets up a company, he does not put his name on that company, right? But because the money launderer is on the run from places to places, and he's sitting somewhere in a country that is a tax haven, for example, or some high-risk country where there's war or whatever, just to hide himself. But then he has incorporated a company using genuine people, using people with clean record, and that entity is registered, and then the entity presents themselves for account opening, and then they start to do business, and they're doing genuine business. But remember, the real owner is planning 5-10 years ahead of when he will use that entity. But he has started by ensuring that the entity is clean. Now, what your transaction monitoring will help you do, as Paxton was speaking to it, is that in the course of the life of this business, that individual would need to use that entity for the real reason why he incorporated that entity using clean people. He would then say, okay, I am in British Virgin Island. Please help me transfer $1 or $5 or $10 million to the British Virgin Islands. You see, as soon as that transaction occurs, the entity that was onboarded is a local entity doing businesses in Naira, and all of those sort of things. As soon as they move that significant money, or they attempt to move that significant money, we would expect that your transaction monitoring system will pick it. We would expect that your knowledgeable relationship managers will raise their hand up and say that, hey, compliance, can you take a second look at this? Because this is an unusual request or an unusual transaction. In the course of investigating this, you will find out that it's possible that they are moving that money to an entity somewhere in the British Virgin Islands. If you're lucky, when you then ask for further details, that look, this transaction, we want to do it, but this is an unusual transaction, okay? We need additional documents as to the ownership of that entity, wherever it is. So you find out, they will either tell you that, no, we can't give it to you. Then you'll see that that's a red flag. It means that ab initio you're dealing with an entity that you don't really know, okay? Other people will give it to you, and then you will then unveil and see that, look, I shouldn't have dealt with this company in the first place. Another opportunity that you can also use is at the point of onboarding a customer. I've had instances where a case was escalated to me to review for account opening. And I discovered that the person that is the managing director of this entity was somebody who barely just graduated. He was about 25 years old. But this company was doing transaction, according to them, they've done transaction in the region of $1 billion. And I'm asking myself, a 25-year-old being a managing director of a company that has a footprint in over 50 countries, whose transaction is running into $1 billion, I am not sure that this is the real owner, because they said he's the MD and significant owner. So I returned and I said that, look, these are my concerns, okay? If you answer this question and I'm satisfied, we'll be able to open this account. Automatically, you will see that given that kind of arrangement, there is a good chance that this guy is being used by somebody that we are not seeing. Okay, then you see pictures of this person on social media. He has luxurious cars, he has a palatial mansion at 25, and all of those sort of things. So you have a lot of red flags that would give you a jolt to say that, look, maybe these people are not telling me the real story. Another opportunity is when you review a customer's MEMAT. Okay, you will find out that some companies will deliberately say that they can or they have issued bearer shares. Okay, then you start to know, because if you then ask them the particulars of that bearer shares, they can't tell you, because bearer shares in its nature is shares that confers ownership to the person that holds that shares. So it's not as if you will say these shares, X amount of shares belong to Ibrahim Bello. Ibrahim Bello will just hold a certificate, okay, who does not show his name or anything, but confers rights to him to a certain number of shares. This is one of the major reasons why our regulations are saying that, look, we do not want bearer shares, because we will not be able to unveil who the real owner will be able to mask his identities. So with these few words of mine, without really necessarily repeating what other speakers have said, I hope that I've been able to shed a bit more light from a financial institution and designated non-financial institutions perspective. Thank you. Moderator, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Thank you so much for your presentation. I actually listened all through. I also want to thank everyone who has made a presentation. I looked through the back end and I was trying to see if there are questions for you, but I couldn't find any. However, I have a couple of questions here, and I hope the affected panelists will help us to respond to it. So once again, I am still going back to Mr. Tolu. I hope Mr. Tolu is still there. Okay. Trying to figure out if Mr. Tolu is still there. All right. Okay. I think Mr. Temitope Erenomo is still there. Okay. I just have a few questions here just before we run off. Someone wants to. I hope you can hear me, sir.
I can hear you.
All right. Okay. So I have someone who said they've been, filing returns to SCUML for 2 years now, and response has not been very regular. And in the last 2 years, they've only received response twice from SCUML. The person wants to know why that is. Someone also wants to know if SCUML will be willing to, have a kind of training and sensitization for the accountable institutions under the purview of SCUML. Okay, that's second. Thirdly, someone wants to know, that's Kayode Shoneye, wants to know why the document they uploaded to SCUML platform is returned as illegible, is referred to as illegible, even after they've tried to, send it on several occasions. Wants to know why that is. I think those are the other questions that we have. And then once you respond to that, then we can begin to wind down the program with a view to call it a day. So you have the floor, sir.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Let me start with the question of the person who said we've returned their documents as being illegible. Now, oftentimes, what's happened is that from their side, they might not be able to view that and see that what they compress is actually illegible. But by the time you upload it and we download it from here, you actually see that some of those things you can't read them. So we reject such application and we tell them exactly why such applications are illegible. Now, sometimes you also find out that applicants for registration don't use the original document. Possibly the original person who is applying, sent the photocopies to them to use, and the process of scanning and compressing and all that, you find out that the quality of the document becomes so poor. Now, let me go to the person who asked if SCUML has plans of training and sensitization for accountable institutions. Now, we've done that extensively. We've done that several times, across Nigeria. We've engaged the self-regulatory organizations, coalition of NPOs, in several trainings. And also to let you know that you cannot get our certificate unless you sit for a sensitization session, which actually ensure that everyone who is applying for SCUML certificate actually know what they need to do and what is required of them. The first question, I don't know if you can remind me of that again.
Someone said they've been trying
okay.
to.
It's okay. I got that now. The person who has been filing reports and has only gotten response from SCUML twice, in several years. I'll say that is actually that is quite exceptional. We will actually look into that. I don't know if the person can, put his the name of his company on the chat box. Let me see. Let me follow up on that. That is actually exceptional. We have a standby team that actually look into the mails and the reports. And once they get the reports, review the reports, they send responses acknowledging this report. That is quite exceptional. I would like to take that. Yes, via the same email. Now, possibly there was a change in email because we've seen cases whereby compliance officers use their personal emails for this official filing of reports, or sometimes when the compliance officers are changed and the company has not taken steps to change the email address and all that, we get issues with that as well. But in this case, I would like the person to put his name on the chat box. Let me see and follow up on what exactly the issues are. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful time. And just taking the last issue for the day, that is the vote of thanks. And I have the instruction of the board and management of Data Pro Limited to sincerely appreciate our distinguished guests, speakers, discussants, and participants at this very important webinar. The truth is that for everything that has a beginning, has an ending, we have thus come to the end of this important gathering, albeit virtual. However, the very informative, educative, and pragmatic insights provided by our speakers and guests, I believe, is not lost on all of us. So it is on this note that we appreciate the Director General of GIABA, Registrar General of CAC, and Director of Financial Policy and Regulation of CBN, all of them ably represented by very eminent representatives. So I want to specifically thank Dr. Bruno Nduka, Director of Evaluation at GIABA, who made the first presentation. I also want to thank Mr. Tolulope Shonaike, the representative of Registrar General of Corporate Affairs Commission. I want to thank Mr. Isa Aminu Buhari, the representative of the Director of Financial Policy and Regulation of Central Bank of Nigeria. We also appreciate the thought-provoking lectures delivered by SCUMUL through Mr. Eninomo for his wonderful presentation, and also the chairman of ACOBIN, represented by Mr. Ibrahim Bello. And also want to thank the president of Compliance Institute of Nigeria, Mr. Patterson Bolea, for their wonderful presentations. So this vote of thanks will be incomplete, but I also failed to mention the contribution of my colleagues and other people who work together with me at the back end here to ensure absence of any form of disruption, even though it has been said that technology cannot be trusted at all times. But we want to thank them immensely for all our participants from all over the world, from West Africa to the rest of Africa, including UK, US, and the rest of them. You've been very wonderful. And finally, let me specifically appreciate the restlessness and the quest of the founder and the managing director of Data Pro Limited, for taking our focus away from the furor generated by the signing of the CAMA bill into law by the president. And you will agree with me that our gathering is worth the while. and it has been able to successfully channel our energy and discussion towards how best our accountable institutions under the law can achieve very robust customer due diligence procedure by domesticating the CAMA 2020. So on this note, I want to thank every one of you. I want to say have the best of the rest of the day. For a program like this, a lot of people will want to know when and how is the item 7 going to be organized. Since this program has happened virtually, I also want to assure you that perhaps we are going to have item 7 also served virtually. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.